Gentlemen, Minister, Mrs. Ambassador, everyone, yes. Thank you very much. Please take a seat so that we can proceed. Thank you very much you all for your presence, abundant presence. I'm Cyril Brett. I'm representative of Naval Group here in Greece, but most important, I have the honor of organizing this event on behalf of the Maritime Committee of the French-Greek Chamber of Commerce and Industry. So I will immediately give the floor to the president of the committee, Monsieur Philippe Plou-Dreyfus, then to Ambassador Auer and to Minister Stylianidis. And the floor is yours, Philippe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cyril. Thank you, Cyril. That was really short. I will not say again thank you to Minister Stylianidis. Lucky country, Greece has a Minister of Shipping. We would love to have that in France. To Ambassador Laurence Auer, but to all of you for being here today. It's very important. As Cyril, who has been in charge with Katarina Manali of organizing this day, I want to say in advance thank you, because it's been a big effort and it is already a big success with all the fine people around here today. Why are we organizing a day in shipping, we as French? Because people don't know that we are also a big maritime country. Not everybody knows that. People think of course, Norway, of course, Greece, but France, among the other big maritime country in Europe, I would say. We have leading ship owners, definitely. In one of them will be talking later from CMA. There's our group, and we have very well-known, efficient, fine shipyards, building very fine ships, big ones and smaller shipyards also. We have top leading banks in shipping finance, top leading insurance companies. So for all these reasons, and not only because we have the biggest or second biggest maritime economic zone in the world, it's because we have these companies very active and very efficient. Subject towards greener shipping. We've been going or trying to go towards greener shipping for myself at least 15 years. I've been for a long time advocating that a top priority should be given in shipping. When I was president of Exxon, when I was president of BIMCO, should be given to social issues, which are more and more important today, and first of all, environmental issues. Not always, I've been trying that in the desert for many years, not always followed by everybody. Not everyone has been sensibilized. Today, everyone is sensibilized to environmental issues because it's on our, not against our door. It's already in our house, and we have to see it. This is it's not original to have a conference on greener shipping. There have been a lot, and there will be more, but it's such an important issue that I think it was important that the Chamber of Commerce and the Maritime Committee tackled this issue. Today, we will be having two round tables, one to greener shipping, and it was Yannick Le Gourrière, the girl who will be in charge of that. And the second one, which is perfectly in line with the first one, is about new fuels, which is the main issue, maybe, we are facing today. What, when, where, and how much? And I don't know if you will be getting answers. We will be getting answers to that, but at least we will be trying. So, thank you. Now, you do the Monsieur Loyal. Thank you for being here, and I'll be back on that.
Thank you, Mr. President, for your fine words. So it's time now to hear the representative of France here in Greece, Ambassador Laurence Auer. The floor is yours.
Thank you, dear Cyril. Mr. Minister, dear Minister Stylianides, Mr. President, dear Philippe Louis Dreyfus, it is my great, great honor to be here today for opening this Maritime Forum on this so important topic, Maritime Committee, entitled Towards Greener Shipping, a Reality Check. I would also like to extend my thanks to the visionary approach of the Chambre de Commerce, because if this committee, the Maritime Committee of the CCI France-Greece, was established 2 years ago, all the topics and the dedication to the strengthening of the ties between our two maritime sectors has been so useful during the last months. Today's topic is so crucial for both our economies, but also for a cooperation between the two countries. Greek ship owners are investing to modernize their fleets in order to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions and to promote new kinds of fuels. We know that. It's an international topic, we know that as well. But also France has among its policy objectives the development of zero-emission ship, which in the framework of France Mer 2030 is a question of research. It's also a question of having programs where we can invest together, and the French companies will be keen to share the result of this work with Greek actors. It is a good time, ladies and gentlemen, to check the progress and to identify the possible roadblocks towards change. The discussion is part of a broader network of collaboration, as we all know, between France and Greece. But let me just stress the fact that we did so much progress in 1 year. Mr. Minister, you know that last June, during Posidonia, we had the signing of an MOU between France and Greece on the question of oceans, protection of oceans. It has several different aspects that we decided to work on a bilateral cooperation together. One part is, of course, the environment, but there is a part of industrial perspectives, but also several key issues. For instance, the deep sea mining, the fight against plastic pollution, the consultations on development of offshore wind energy, which is crucial for the Mediterranean as a whole, but here in particular, and at last, cooperation on green technologies. We were very proud, Mr. Minister, because it's thanks to you that we managed to sign such an important agreement. At the same time, you remember, ladies and gentlemen, during Posidonia exhibition that the French embassy had an event to present the French Maritime Register to the maritime communities of Greece, showcasing advantages, but also the fiscal competitive policies, the aspect of international safety standards, and all the opportunities for fostering strong maritime partnership. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, we are now preparing the Nice Summit on Ocean under United Nations, which is this big event where I'm asked every minute to do something, including bringing a boat in Nice. And I'm looking for a boat, and you will help me as usual, because I know that I can count on a very dear friend, Mr. Minister. This major event has to be developed with Franco-Greek cooperation. For once, because it's in the Mediterranean and we have a bilateral agreement. For second, because we are in Europe, we have values, we have standards, but also because when we will hold the Nice Summit between 9th and 13th June 2025, I'm sure that the topics will interest all this community. The conference will tackle the question of accelerating the action, mobilizing all the stakeholders to conserve and sustainable the use of the oceans. So we look forward that this working maritime committee will take part of the preparation that we can have for the Nice Summit. And I'm happy to continue to work with the Greek authorities on all the aspects we have signed together. Ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ. Συγγνώμη. δεν καταλαβαίνω αλλά λίγο ελληνικά, αλλά το καρδιά είμαι μαζί μας.
Ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ, κυρία Πρεσβύρα, για τα λόγια σας. Τώρα είναι η ώρα να ακούσουμε το Υπουργό της Ναυτιλίας, το κύριο Στυλιανίδη. Αν έχετε... Ναι, παρακαλώ. Ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ.
Merci beaucoup. Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I would like to apologize for my more or less not adequate French, and because my son always said that my father has to avoid to speak in French, it is a humiliation of our family. Because of my pronunciation. And, okay, sorry for this. Your Greek is so excellent, so it's difficult to enter in this comparison. Completely. First of all, Your Excellency, Ambassador Lorena Noel, my dear friend for a previous time, President of the French Hellenic Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Ioannis Trikardos, President of the Shipping Commission of the French Hellenic Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Philippe-Louis Dreyfus, distinguished representatives of the French and Greek business community, ladies and gentlemen. It's really my honor to be here today with you in this year's forum of the French Hellenic Chamber of Commerce and Industry. First of all, let me thank the Chamber's board for inviting me to address such a distinguished audience. You know, my dear friend, the Ambassador of France, already said and already emphasized on this, Greece and France are united by strong ties of friendship, mutual respect and support. At the end of the day, we share the same principles and values. The European principles and values, and we are part of the same family, the European family. And today's event is an opportunity to build on this excellent relationship, an opportunity to work closer together to tackle a common challenge for the future of shipping, the transition to a greener, more sustainable and decarbonized industry. Let me start by setting the record straight. Shipping is by far the most environment-friendly means of transport. I think no doubt about this. It transports approximately 90% of international trade and accounts for only 2.7% of the global greenhouse gas emission. This is the numbers speak for themselves. The International Maritime Organization, IMO, put forward responsibly a global strategy for the reduction of the emissions from ships. This demonstrates that we recognize the urgent need to combat one of the most important challenges of our lifetime, if not the most important climate crisis. This strategy, first, sets the target of net zero emissions from international shipping close to 2050, and second, set up a roadmap for all countries to follow to uptake alternative zero and near zero carbon fuels by 2030. Moreover, the IMO strategy paves the way for the energy transition in shipping and also creates the political environment for the intensification of investments to develop green alternative fuels and deploy innovative technologies on board. Greece, as you know, and France also, have warmly welcomed the IMO strategy. As a global shipping power, and thanks, Philippe, for this recognition, however, we do not stop at the endorsements level. With our leading voice within the IMO, we engage actively in the current discussion towards efficient and pragmatic policies. We need radicalism, but in a realistic way of thinking, in a realistic framework. We need concrete policies and simple, fair and practical measures with added value, not just in theory, in the sky. We need global solutions which can be applied on the ground, viable, practical and efficient. Together with our EU colleagues, Greece formulates the relevant EU proposals, combining the GFS with a greenhouse gas pricing mechanism. Regarding the latter, Greece strongly favors of GHG global levy, which we consider as a simple, effective and fair measure. For this to be achieved, we need collaboration, and particularly cross-sectoral collaboration across the entire maritime sector. Fuel producers and suppliers, engine manufacturers, ship owners and commercial operators, ports and shipyards should coordinate and engage in an open and transparent dialogue. We need to realize that in this effort, we are all in the same boat. The objective is the same across the whole maritime chain, to examine all possible options with an open mind and with caution to provide realistic solutions, maintaining the notion of technological neutrality. This is why Greece recently announced its participation as a member in the Clean Energy Marine Hubs initiative. This is an initiative which aims at coordinating decarbonization efforts from ports, shipping companies, and energy firms across all shipping modes. In order to ensure the worldwide availability of safe, alternative, low and zero carbon fuels, we need such a holistic approach. Ladies and gentlemen, no one doubts that the green transition requires substantial amount of finance. Estimates show that decarbonizing the world's fleet by 2050 could cost $80 to $28 billion annually, with an additional $28 to $90 billion needed each year for the related infrastructure. Because if we have only fuels without infrastructure, we are in the middle of the nowhere. For Europe, the recent Draghi report estimates that the 40 billion euros in annual investments will be needed between 2031 and 2050 for the energy transition of shipping to happen. Regardless of the decarbonization trajectory and the related technology, the transition will come at a cost. This is certain. In this front, as policymakers, we need to provide the correct financial incentives for a smooth and efficient transition to cleaner fuels and technologies. And for this to happen, this is my strong conviction, we need to think out of the box. The amount of finance required and the nature of the intervention needed, from green ports and gold ironing to the production and usage of green maritime fuels, dictate the need for synergies. Synergies between the public and the private sector. The so-called PPP, public-private partnership, is a financial instrument which deserves to be examined in depth. In Greece, we have already started to apply this logic, this approach. We are putting in place a PPP scheme for the renewal of the public passenger fleet. Ágones Ramés. This will provide investors a strong cash flow visibility, making the green investment more economically viable. At the same time, we need to utilize the funds accumulated through possible global market-based measures. Without the market, we are, as I said, in the middle of the nowhere. The same holds also for the EU and the emission trade scheme, the very well-known ETS, currently in place. To invest the ETS revenues into maritime decarbonization activities and facilitate the access to public and private finance in a further way. Shipping, clean energy and technology producers must be at the forefront of the green transition in the EU. At the same time, building a supply chain for clean maritime fuels in Europe while increasing its maritime industrial capacity must be a priority for the EU. Otherwise, we will lose our competitiveness in all aspects of our fields in which we can activate in the global economy. Dear all, shipping has shown in practice that it's capable to tackle challenges and turn them into opportunities. This is the story of the Greek maritime family. They show the very well-known and an excellent word in Greek language, ελληνική ναυτοσύνη. And here, I'm referring to the recent crisis, the COVID-19 pandemic, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and the related energy crisis, the Red Sea situation, and the current Middle East crisis. I'm therefore confident that we can turn the challenge of decarbonization into an opportunity. And most importantly, it is an opportunity for the EU to regain its competitiveness, to advance itself further at the field of energy transition in shipping and the development of clean maritime fuels. At the Hellenic Ministry of Maritime Affairs and Insular Policy, we are representing and we are at the real core of the largest fleet worldwide. We'll do our best to support the maritime sector to evolve and advance further. We'll be at the forefront, and this is my personal commitment, both in the IMO and in Brussels. Belramon, European Commission headquarters, we will work together and towards the development of mid and long-term pragmatic measures which will lead us to carbon neutral shipping. In a realistic framework and always with an open mind and with a spirit of cooperation. This is the only way in order to reach our common goal, and it's the only way to keep the European competitiveness at the highest level for the prosperity of the European people. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Minister, for the vision you gave us and for your very inspiring words. You set up a very wide landscape, and this is exactly the way the Maritime Committee of the French-Greek Chamber of Commerce wanted to make it. And I see Mr. Laurent Thuillier, who helped us as a committee to exist and to, I think, thrive. This is exactly the way we see it. It goes from finance to politics, from normative work to fight against climate change, and it encompasses a lot of key players that are so kind to be here. Before we go to the first panel and to the words of Mr. Philippe Louis Dreyfus and Yannick Gourrière, who will be the moderator, I would like to thank very much our sponsors, and first and foremost, Payet Paleoglu for the Bureau Veritas. Without the sponsoring, the gold sponsoring of Bureau Veritas, we could not have made it happen, of course. Mr. Nielsen, who is in the room, I just at a glance, for the company Ascens Marorca. Without you, it wouldn't have been possible, that's for sure. And thank you very much, a special thank. And to our partners now, so Navigator, where is Danae? Okay, here. Filet Allah, I'm looking for my friend here. Thank you very much once more. Louis Dreyfus Armateur, it goes without saying, the port of Thessaloniki, and of course I will forget the Franman, I cannot forget it as well. Once more, you have to bear in mind, we are an association, so everyone is giving its time, its work, its money for that. I know that sponsoring can be very challenging within the companies to get, even the sums might seem limited, but it's always a fight. So thank you again for those women, men in the companies that dedicate their time, their efforts to make it happen and to make that kind of event happen so that we can share the vision by Minister Stylianides and by Ambassador Auer. So now it's time to dive in and to go to the panel moderated by Yannick Le Gourrière, Crédit Agricole. So it's take a seat. And I must say, I'm quite eager to listen to the panelists because you will have elephants on those panel, a very heavy panel. Key players of the shipbuilding company, key players of the shipping community. And now it's time for our president to say a few words to set the framework of the panel. Philippe, once more, you have to work. Sorry for that.
So I have to work, and you did mention that we're not being paid for that. Yeah, okay. Okay. Thank you again to Minister Laurence for. I'll come back to you because, as I mentioned earlier, environmental issues have been on my program for many, many years, 15 years, even 20 years. And I'm not saying that, I'm saying that because it is the truth, it can be proved. At a time when shipping was not seen as a problem, but still seen as what it is, the solution. But now the public opinion has changed, and the image of shipping in the politics and in the streets, not in Greece, I'm sure, because it's always and will always be good, but in many countries it has changed, and not in the best way. So we have to fight, and to do that, that fight to get a greener shipping, greener ships, greener fuels, greener mentalities among people. I did not find always a total support among all my partners in shipping 10 or 15 years ago. Now things have changed. The elephant is in the room now. We cannot, we have to see it. And we have many, how could I say, pressures on us in the shipping world, all parts of shipping world, so legal, political, they are linked, by the way, but as I said, the public opinion. So we have to deal with these matters. It will be very interesting to listen to Yannick and his team of experts, which he will present, discuss setting the scene maybe, and proposing their solutions, and maybe, because that is something which has been mentioned very rightly, as always, by Minister, greener shipping will cost enormous amounts of money, and I don't see, personally, I don't see how we will be able really to deal with this enormous issue, which concerns ship owners, shipyards, everybody in shipping and people out there like banking and insurance. So it will be an interesting panel. I'm sorry earlier I presented quickly Yannick Le Goya for this panel, but I forgot to mention Payet for the second panel. It has been done, and the contribution of Payet is enormous to the exchanges between the two big shipping countries, which are Greece and France. Thank you very much. Yannick, your turn.
Thank you. Thank you, Philippe. All right, so the first panel is about, we started discussing what would be an interesting topic, and as we know, a lot of regulation is coming, and also the fleet is aging, and so we thought maybe, a lot of Greek ship owner, of course, have been attending, the previous, maritime committee, maritime forum of the CCI, and then we thought maybe also we'll have a debate between the European shipyard, and then a discussion also with the ship owner. So let me introduce the panelists first. So we have Kyrios Panagiotis Xenokostas, Kyrios Xenokostas, please come. So he's an entrepreneur, engineer, investor in various industries, to mention shipbuilding, maritime, aviation, defense and securities, and energy. He's the founder and CEO of the Onyx Technology Group, focusing on ship repair, shipbuilding, energy transition, integrated solution, developing leading shipyard port, technology and logistic hub in the Mediterranean, Middle East, Asia, and North America. The group has 3,000 employees. Interestingly, according to my source, the group has invested so far 140 million in Greece, and is in the last 4 years, and is right now implementing additional investment in Greece, about 500 million, if I'm correct. So, and also, last but not least, so last year, Kyrios Xenokostas has, on his initiative, also launched, the Hellenic Shipyard Association, and is currently the president of the board of the association. And then, last but not least, so Kyrios Xenokostas is graduated from the Hellenic Air Force Academy Engineer Department as an aeronautical engineer, and has been also an Air Force officer for 8 years. And I would say, as we say in the US, thank you for your service. And he has an MBA from the University Institute of Kurt Bosch in Switzerland. So thank you. Welcome, Carlos Tate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Second panelist, so we have Kyrios John Dragnis. Please, John. Yeah, welcome. So John is the CEO of the Golden Port Group, which is present in the dry bulk and tanker. So, and according to Clarkson, if I'm correct, so on the dry side, you have a little bit more than 20 ships, dry bulk vessel, and 7 container ships. And then on the tanker side, which is Ocean Gold, 12 tankers. And John also is a graduate of Cass Business School in London. Welcome, John.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Then we have, so joining us, through the camera, based in Marseille at CMS CGM, Monsieur Farid Trad. He's the Vice President of Bunkering and Energy Transition at CMS CGM. As you know, a global player in the liner industry, and hard to count the number of vessels, but I can fairly say that a little bit more than 600 vessels under operation as of today. So, Monsieur Trad has been at the CMS CGM Group since 2005, and is, as I mentioned, currently in charge of the energy department to drive the energy transition, which is at the heart of CMA, CGM, sustainability strategy. Is responsible, as part of his duties, responsible for sourcing and supplying all energy of the marine and aviation division of the group. So as we know, so CMA is also not only a ship owner, but also an airplane owner as well. He's also in charge of the development of alternative fuel, such as biofuel, biomethane, synthetics, e-methanes, which will be we'll see after, a key solution for the decarbonization of the maritime sector. Last but not least, his responsibility as well includes coordinating CMA, CGM, all effort to comply with environmental regulation, which, as we know, are more and more by the day, and also to ensure in the long term future that CMA, CGM as well is on a decarbonization trajectory. So thank you. Welcome. Okay. Now we have Kyrios Miltiadis Varvitsiokis. Please, welcome. Kyrios Miltiadis Varvitsiokis is the chairman of Skaramangas Shipyard since 2004, this year. And previously, as a career in politics, he has been Minister of Shipping, alternate Minister of Foreign Affairs for Europe, Vice-Foreign Minister for International Economics and Relations, and has been also elected 11 times as a member of the Parliament. And he is a graduate of Athens College, Athens Law School, and as a master from Harvard University. Welcome, Kyrios Sirtate.
Thank you.
All right. And last one is Kyrios George Tsiradakis. George, thank you. Welcome. So George is the founder and managing director of XRTC Business Consultant, which is a financial advisory firm, a leading one in Greece, which has been in the past also a representative of Credit Lyonnais and Natixis. George also has developed linked between the Greek shipping community and the Chinese shipping finance market, and has been also appointed as a maritime financial expert by China Development Bank, a very large organization in China. George has a long career at Credit Lyonnais, and before founding XRTC, he was the head of shipping for Greece, Middle East, and India. Welcome, George. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So that's for the intro. Thank you. All right. Can we have the next slide? So what we will do, so before we jump on the question, so each of the panelists, will have also the chance to, present very quickly their company and what they are doing in the field of, decarbonization, greening the fleet. But just to launch, the panels, just wanted to show you, or highlight two things and what's coming up. As we know, there's a lot of new environmental rules and regulation, not to mention IMO 2030, with EXI, CII. And then we have in Europe Fuel EU, and then we have EU ETS. So that's for the regulation part. And then if you look at the what's coming up, the fleet, which is aging. And just to give you a bit of a statistic, today, on this size together, on this size, on the max sector, dry side, we have 2,600 vessels which are more than 15 years old. Panamax, 900. So which is roughly speaking between for on this size, on the max and Panamax, about 30% of their respective fleet, which is enormous. Then a couple of data as well from Clarkson. Thank you very much. On the tanker side, so if we take the crude, only about 15 years old and above, almost 1,000 vessels. And then on the MR product tanker, roughly speaking, 750 vessels. So just mentioning, this dry bulk sector and the tanker side, which are, a big part of the Greek owner fleet, we're talking about 5,000 vessels, which are, 15 years old and above. And why I mentioned the age, because obviously the age of vessel means that not necessarily this vessel will comply with the forthcoming rules. Mentioning again IMO 2030 and the CI rating, and also what's happening as well in Europe with Fuel EU and EU ETS as well. All right, so now we'll give the chance. So I think you're first, Kyrios Xenokostas, and I think you have instead of presentation, you have a video for us.
Yeah.
So we'll watch the video. Okay. If you want to say something, please. Yeah. Oh, well, you can say
Okay, of
yeah.
course. First of all, thank you for your kind invitation. I'm very happy to be here in this important event to share with you our vision, what are the plans for the future, and how we plan to adapt all these new technologies and ways to move forward to a greener future. As a group, I'm also proud because this year we are celebrating 20 years since we established. The last 5 years we have accomplished a very important, very difficult task, which was the birth of Greek shipyard. We started in Syros, we continued in LFCs. During these years we have serviced more than 650 ships, which is a historical record. And we have put back to work 1,500 people in both shipyards. And we are very happy because we are creating a very important footprint in the Greek GDP. For the future, we plan to do more in different sectors. And I'm also very happy because last year we established the Hellenic Shipyard Association, which is an association, the founding members are other enterprises and industries, but also other associations. So indirectly, we represent 80,000 SMEs and more than 200,000, 50,000 employees. So I'm here, and thank you again for your kind invitation.
Thank you for coming. Yeah. Thank you very much. I think next we have heard John Dragnis, and we have a presentation from as well for you to present. If they can put it.
I think that's
I think,
Miltiadis
well,
should take this.
well,
You can take
sorry,
this.
Singobi.
They have skipped you.
No, you can take this. I'll do next.
Okay.
It's
So,
Well, okay. I'm the CEO of Skaramagas Shipyards. Skaramagas Shipyards is a newly established company. We are within our first year of operation. We undertook this old shipyard, which is the biggest shipyard in Greece, founded in the 50s, developed and expanded over the last decades, that has been closed for commercial operation for the last 15 years. The first commercial ship that got into the shipyard last February was the first one after 15 years that not a commercial repair has been performed in this shipyard. And we can say that till now we have serviced more than 30 vessels within this year. Unfortunately, under the previous administrations, the shipyard has been deprived of the actual tools that are needed. These are the floating docks and critical repairs that are performed now. Until now, we have performed repairs of more than 10 million euros, and we continue on a pace of more than 1 million per month in order to level up our capabilities. The fact is that ship repair and shipbuilding in Europe has become a very difficult task. If we consider how many ships were built in the European Union in the early 2000s and how many they are built now, the number is declining on a yearly basis. 50% of the world ships were built in the 2000 in Europe, and now less than 5%. And this is something that actually has excluded the European shipyards from building containers, tankers, and bulk carriers. And we have got stuck only with special purpose vessels, with tugboats, and of course cruise ships and mega yachts. There we are going to focus. We are going to focus on these special vessels. We are going to focus on the mega yachts, which is a fast-growing business, especially in the Mediterranean. And of course, we are going to focus for the future on becoming one of the shipyards, of the few shipyards in the Mediterranean that can perform repairs to LNG carriers, which is a fast-growing fleet and a fast-growing Greek-owned fleet. And I think that in 2025, we are going to perform the first repair of an LNG carrier in this part of the world. Having said that, I'm going to tell you two big challenges that shipbuilding and ship repairing in Greece is facing. The first is that there is not an ecosystem, a very big ecosystem of companies that can provide services. Yesterday we had the pleasure to welcome the ChemExpo, the Association of the Shipbuilders and Exporters in Skaramagas for their 10th anniversary. 32 companies are doing great things, but this is not enough in order to have an ecosystem to build a ship from A to Z, from European parts, and a great part of those coming from Greece. The second is that we have lost the appetite of the new generation to come and get involved in the shipbuilding industry. Last September, only one student has been enrolled in the school of OAEL, of Aspropyrgos, in order to become a welder. And this lack of personnel and skilled personnel is actually harming the future of our business. And therefore, we are going also, by leveling up our business, we are going to also operate our own schools, but I think that it's not enough because people are not willing to come and work in the shipyards as they did in the past. Final part has to do with the energy transition. As a latecomer in this greener field and missing, let's say, what has been the target of the recovery fund, we would like to see extra funding and extra capabilities for big infrastructures and big manufacturers like a shipyard in order to become greener. And that means that we want more slots in order to sell the energy produced in the shipyard, and we want also a favorable, as it has been till now, a favorable financing of this kind of great finances, because the energy cost in Greece compared to France is triple. Last month it has been triple, and that's undermining a lot the competitiveness of our business.
Okay, thank you.
It was a short introduction. I'm sure that I'm going to answer your questions.
Exactly. We will cover this point as well more extensively after. And then we have a presentation. So if we can have the presentation for Golden Port for John Dragnis, please.
Maybe it's...
Harid.
Well,
Voilà.
Okay, so
Harid.
sorry, John. So we'll do now
No
with
worries,
CMS CGM. I think they will retrieve your presentation
Very
somewhere.
patient.
Thanks. Thank you.
Hello, so good afternoon, everybody. I think you're hearing me. First of all, thank you to the Chamber of Commerce of France and Greece Maritime Committee and its president, Philippe Louis-Dreyfus, to invite us. It's an honor to be here. I want also to convey the warm regard and support of our CEO, Chairman and CEO, Rodolphe Saadé. If we look at CMA CGM decarbonization strategy, the most important things, as has been said by our moderator, is that CMA CGM is committed to a net zero by 2050. And more than that, CMA is supporting the IMO midterm measures that requires decarbonization by steps with 2 milestones, one in 2030 and one in 2040. And we are aiming at the highest ambition of the IMO, which is -30 by 2030 and -80% by 2040. So this challenging ambition requires to have a strategy and many means on the table. So we have our decarbonization strategy is based on 2 pillars. Number one, and the most critical one, because this is where we have the quick wins, is of course to commit to operational excellency and to reduction of consumption, to be more specific, and energy efficiency, and also to modernize our assets. We have 650 vessels under operations as per today, and of course this is a huge challenge, knowing what kind of shocks the supply chain worldwide has been experiencing in the last years. to be able to manage it from an efficient point of view. So modernizing our assets is strategic. Shipyards have a role to play there, and we'll come back to that. And number two of our pillar is, of course, to increase as much as possible, and knowing the challenges of the cost gap and the regulation, or energy mix of alternative energies. If we look at our assets, I will focus on shipping, of course, but just a brief word to say that as a logistic company, we are also committing to ground, air, and infrastructure decarbonization. But if we come back to shipping, CMA has ordered 131 vessels that will run on alternative energy, dual fuel LNG or dual fuel methanol, that represent an 80 billion capex for this, and this is by 2028. All our new orders will be on alternative energy in order to maximize and reach high decarbonization targets. If we go to the next slide, the question of technology, CMA CGM has adopted a neutral stance in terms of technology, which means that even if LNG remains our main course of action with more than 100 LNG, dual fuel LNG vessel ordered, we have also order 24 plus dual fuel methanol vessels. So it means that we'll be running on both energy, and of course, we need to remember that biofuels are still the main drop-in solution for conventional fuels. So when it comes to renewable energy, of course, we will look at biomethane and biomethanol as a first step to reach the 2030 milestone, fuels from biomass. But it's important also to say that e-fuels that come from green electricity, hydrogen-based fuels, will be critical for the next decade in order to reach our deep decarb objectives. Maybe a quick word about the other fuels that are in discussion, in study in the industry. We may be talking about ammonia. CMA is devoting a lot of resources, R&D resources with our partner about ammonia. And that's still a solution in the making. And hydrogen is also being studied, but represents still some many technical challenges. If maybe a quick word about our assets. Investing in new build is something, but also retrofitting our existing assets is critical by adapting them and making more energy efficient. And again, maybe to say that shipyards all over the world and in Europe has a key role to play in order to keep this asset efficient. Renewable fuels are 3 to 4 times more expensive than conventional fuel. The willingness to pay of the customer is still something that is in the making. Regulation is also coming, but we are waiting for 2025 to see how the IMO will implement new regulations. So any quick win, any green molecule that is not burned or spared due to a lower consumption will be important. So having the best vessel is critical. Thank you very much, and happy after in the Q&A to answer more questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Farid. Thank you very much. Okay. Oh, we found the presentation.
There you go. Awesome. So can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, we do, yeah.
So I have something, but if you find it, fine. Otherwise, I can just talk through it.
Yeah.
So we are a private shipping group. Is a classic model, in Greece, found in Greece. We are an owner-operator. Currently on the water, we have 43 vessels among dry bulk and containers. Yeah, just stay here. Dry bulk containers, tankers, and LPG carriers. Our tanker side of the company, Ocean Gold, is running also a 10 vessel. Another 10 vessels are coming next year and beginning of 26, focused on LR2s and IMO2 methanol, marine line coated MRs, a program which is total about $550 million. And so basically, our focus is on the sectors. Otherwise, we have also, it's not mentioned here, but recently expanded the group into offshore. So we bought out, together with some partners, a fleet of offshore vessels focused in the Middle East, servicing the oil and gas sector, not wind. So we're going a bit more traditional and focusing on Middle East and Africa, and that fleet is going to be run from Dubai. And another sector of our marine, let's say, activities is, since it was mentioned by Mr. Vavitsiotis, is Golden Yachts. We are the only super yacht builder, part of a global organization of Super Yacht Builders Association, which is Fedship, Lucen. We're the only Greek company in the history of the organization to join that association. And we built these yachts. Currently it's a small activity, basically delivering one yacht a year. It takes 3.5 years to build each one, and they're delivered from Piraeus. But we do have a European supply chain, as was well described by Mr. Vavitsiotis, and there are challenges there, which I'm happy to discuss. We have 3 facilities in Piraeus, much smaller than the gentleman here, but focused exclusively on super yachts and super yacht maintenance and super yacht construction and rebuild and refit. If you move along, please, next slide. What we're doing is, was well described by CMA as well, so we took advantage of the good last 4 or 5 years, which have been amazing, right, for shipping. We sold down a lot of our older tonnage. We're building now new tonnage, which is more efficient, has features that can help us be more competitive with regards to environmentally, but also on the market-based measures. Fuel-wise, we're focusing on biofuels, drop-in fuels, and methanol, having some of our ships being methanol-ready level 2. We are introducing all of our ships with biocide-free silicone hull coatings, so we've already done that in most of the fleet. We make sure that we very accurately can monitor the energy footprint of our fleet by having installed everywhere mass flow meters and torque meters in our engine, having an automatic system reporting that to the office. Sounds simple, but it took years to get it done properly and homogenize all the data. And finally, we also have invested in other technologies like sub-generators and other kind of technologies, which I can describe later on.
Okay, thank you very much. So, we'll dive now on the question. We don't have a presentation for George Serdakis, but we have a question, question number 6 for you.
You think so?
And yes.
Oh, no, hold on. Who tell you that we don't have a presentation? Who told you this? You don't have. I do have.
You do have. Sorry. So I was waiting for question number 6 for your presentation because exactly for you.
May I please present?
Please, by your minutes. Yeah.
Madam Ambassador, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here with 2 hats. The big hat is that I'm president of the Association of Banking and Financial Executives of Greek Shipping. And the second hat is that I'm a founder, a CEO of a little consulting company with long history, particularly in the French market and in the globe. So there is one thing that I want to present you, and you have to see it properly, because in a few years' time, you won't have it, as at this very moment, the CBRs, they don't have it. You can come closer. This is why I'm here. Don't laugh. Don't laugh. This is my presentation.
What is it? Can I have it?
It's the only brochure that cannot be distributed. I was expecting this question. Ladies and gentlemen, for me it is a coming back after many years working with the French finance market, that we managed at that time to bring in the Greek waters 26 banks to finance the renewal of the Greek ferry sector between 1999, from 98, let's say, to 2006. We managed with COFAS to make transactions. We managed to bring the entire British finance market that does not exist at this very moment in the Greek market. We managed to have 12 German banks supporting the Greek ferry sector. And at the end, we managed, this was just Katerina's and myself idea that we manage it, we managed to finance the last construction of 2 ferries in the 2 shipyards, in Scaramanga, initially, that failed to conclude, and taking all our parts from Scaramanga to bring them to LFC shipyards, that they were the less problematic to complete the 2 vessels. And of course, why nothing went on, what it was the scarcity of those times. It was the lack of understanding. It was the lack of trust. It was the lack, not of human beings, of workers, that is now. Not of land, that is now. It was the lack of trust, in fact, which again we are in front of. And this is why you don't have this brochure. And I don't want to shock you, I'm not supposing to be Benetton, as you remember this publication in the past. I want to go one step further and to agree with the other X of this panel, Mr. Xenokostas, that if you have the business now, do it now. Don't wait for tomorrow. If you speak with Philippe and Philippe says, okay, let me see, don't speak again with Philippe. Go and speak with Payet. Or go and speak with whoever. We are missed. You know, we enter an international market and we follow the international market asking them to do everything for us. We left European capacity that it was just 25 years ago, just 20 years ago, that we were innovative. And now we are lost in studies. We are lost in communication. We are lost in going there and there without implementing. Thanks God, we have some bankers, and particularly in France, that they still there. Crédit Agricole, BNP, they are still there. They are the statues, the columns of the pillars. Sorry, thank you. They are the pillars, Miguelas. They are the pillars.
Thank you, George.
Of this. And we have to help the others to become pillars. We don't want only the Chinese to become there. Because at this very moment, we shift. If you go and see the press, in the international press, you will see big titles in China. Georges came with France, and I was last 4 days. I came only for today, and then I'm going to go back to China. George was with France, being the Minister of Shipping, meaning people from the banks, etc., and we made a very nice presentation around, very successful mission. But you know, it's a pity. It's a pity because I'm not preparing to sign any other type of MOU. I don't want to have an MOU. I want the European countries to think about that we don't have this issue for us. We don't have, and this is what Mr. Varvitsiotis says, reactivation of RFF. Do you know that in Greece, we're supposed to have the RFF working for the economy, and we have excluded the money from inside for shipping? Because we believe that we are in Austria. There are fundamental issues that is not only one-way mistake. This is why I'm here. There is no only one mistake going on one side. It goes both sides. Because even those that they receive the planning of each one individual, and we do not agree, and does not agree with it, he has to stop the relationship, as I said before. Ladies and gentlemen, I am very proud of the members of my delegation, of my association, being hundreds of bankers and financial executives of Hellenic shipping, and many of them being one of the first was the moderator of this panel, that he liked from the beginning this idea. I'm talking about Yannick.
Thank you.
That he participated always in the works. And on this matter, I have to tell you that the finance industry is ready, is here, in order to start working together and to be reactivated for special projects, particularly for the shipbuilding in Europe. And we will continue afterwards.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, George. Thanks for your presentation. Okay. All right. So, conscious about time, so we'll I guess, first question, and very briefly, please. So we mentioned about, the busy agenda on the regulation, environmental rules and regulation, and starting, maybe with the ship owner, John and Farid. How do you see, the future for your business? I mean, this regulation, is it a challenge or is it an opportunity for you?
Actually, obviously, it's both. So, first of all, we have to spend a lot of time understanding it, and not only on managerial level, but everybody has to understand what they're doing and what it means and how it affects all those regulations that are coming. Just taking a step back, I know it's been said a lot, but again, sharing the view of the ICS and the Union of Greek Ship Owners, we're totally against regional measures, like obviously ETS and Fuel EU, unless they only lead to a successful, IMO 2030 strategy. There is no way, we're just going to cause more damage to Europe by being, again, less competitive if it does not pass in the IMO soon. And as the minister said, that there is a global measure that we can all compete, because, the world is bigger than Europe, we're much bigger than Europe, and we have to listen to all the major countries, and we have to have one common rule for everyone to compete fairly. Yeah. So that is one statement that we can discuss later. Regarding this business, it's also an opportunity, as I said. I do hope that it passes in IMO 2, because we have invested massively in new ships, and as many of my colleagues, and these are naturally will be more competitive than a lot of the older tonners that you described. We're talking about tankers, and a classic, a broker will tell you 20%, there is a 25% of the Aframax fleet is more than 15, 20 years old soon. But we have to assume that there is a regulation that's there, and the enforcement of regulation, because we have issues like the dark fleet. I don't want to say dark fleet, let's say alternative fleet, 700 vessels now. Are these vessels going for scrap? I don't see it happening anytime soon. And I don't see CMA or MSC scrapping any vessels at all, although they may have some vessels in their fleet which are more than 25 years old. So the market will lead all these. The market will lead the way, and people will react to the market. Of course, we all want for our children to decarbonize shipping, do our part, have a modern and efficient and very competitive fleet. But we have to measure all parameters, and we have to understand the economics, and we have to read the politics as well, especially in the West, what has been happening, right?
In Europe, yeah.
The environmental agenda is not something that we can escape. We have to do it, it's there. But we do have to listen to what's happening in the West as well. We have to listen to, the governments in America, in Europe, Germany, you see what's happening there. So we have to let's say, be inclusive, as they say, a bit more woke word, but be inclusive and be sustainable, but not environmentally only, but sustainable also from a politics perspective, but also from sustainable, respecting also the people. And the people, of course, they want this, but they also want their livelihood. They want Europe to remain competitive, and we have to remain competitive. So we are prepared for whatever is coming. We have studied thoroughly this. We are prepared. But again, we have to move forward with other major nations as well, not to put the European companies at a disadvantage. Europe has the biggest shipping fleet in the world.
Absolutely.
Greece is 50% of that. of the European fleet. We have amazing companies like CMA, MSC, and Maersk, and other amazing companies in Europe, and these companies must lead the way.
Okay, thank you. And so question for Farid, if you can hear us. So how do you see
Yes,
the
yes, of
future
course.
with...
Thank you very much. So first of all, before saying if regulation are an opportunity, they are a reality. In 2023 CII, in 2024 EU ETS, in 2025 FuelEU Maritime. So for a liner like CMA, we are experiencing a new regulation every year. And next year will be critical because the midterm measure will be voted. And as has been said, the way what will be voted will be critical for the whole industry. For us, for CMA, without effective, harmonized, concrete, and enforceable global regulation, there will not be a level playing field. And level playing field, competitiveness are critical, as has been rightly said, for a European regulation. So we are advocating for this topic, which we see as a major topic. The picture that I have shown in the presentation, showing 5 liner, among them Rodau Sade, but also MSC, Maersk, Hapag, and Wallenius, supporting at COP28 strong regulation, shows the importance of such a topic. And we are concerned that front runners may be sometimes penalized by not having clear regulation, upcoming regulations. It's not only because we want to compete on assets, but also for absorbing the gap for the price of renewable energy. And if we need to buy renewable energy, sometimes we need to do long-term contracts, and without visibility on regulation, we cannot do a long-term contract. So it is critical. It is also critical to have a good regulation, because at some point, regulation will be instrumental in accelerating the adoption of renewable energy, because sometimes it will be a balance between the willingness to pay of the customer that will absorb the high price of renewable and the regulation that will bring us to this new world. Regulation are also an opportunity. If we look at CII, EU ETS, and FuelEU, we clearly see that brand new vessel, efficient energy, and from an energy point of view, have an advantage because they bring us agility and flexibility. Supply chain has been challenging in these years. The Suez issue, the Panama issue, the COVID issue has created a need for liners to be extremely agile in the way they deploy fleet, in the way they manage their compliance. So typically, just to dual fuel LNG vessel could bring, at least for the next years, lots of flexibility. And after that, we can slowly incorporate bio-LNG in order to continue to have this flexibility. So in a nutshell, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity because when we modernize our assets, we renew it, we invest into it through retrofits or through new builds, we can create a competitive advantage.
Okay, thank you. So if I may summarize, from John and you, Farid, so being based in Europe as well, so obviously Europe being quite advanced in regulation, so that's a concern, in terms of even playing field. But at the same time, I think you both see also the fact of being compliant and also fuel efficient, will be also, I guess, an opportunity in the sense that you will be the preferred ships in the future as well. So if I summarize well, okay. So no, I'm turning to the shipyard. And maybe, Panos, how do you see the future? I mean, I mentioned earlier, 5,000 vessels, just, dry bulk and tanker, being 15 years and older. It's a big pie. Am I right? Or
Look, first of all, I'm not sharing ideas or thoughts. I'm sharing the reality. The reality is that we are competitive. We have succeeded to service more than 650 ships. All these ships would have gone to the neighborhood, to other countries internationally, and the decision made to come to our shipyard is because we are competitive.
Okay.
So this is happening, but I think the main question is what do we do in order to sustain competitive and maybe to be more competitive in the years to come. And on our side, we have a massive plan of more than 200 million investments during the next 3 years, $500 million in the next 5 to 6 years, plus the 125 years that we have invested so far in our shipyards. So we do our part. moving to new technologies, moving to robotics, moving to new capex, moving to upgrading our capex. But this is not this is a tango, so we have to dance alongside with the legislation part.
Yeah,
And I couldn't
absolutely.
agree more with Mr. Vargas, because sometimes we feel, and I feel that when Europe comes, EU comes to the framework, it's like Europe is isolated and there is no international competition, and they, this way they're creating unfair competition for our CPLs. So we have to think fast, based also in Draghi's report, and we have to act even today in order to change the future. And we have to be more flexible and to adapt whatever is needed tools in order to support the growth and the prosperity of the sector.
Okay, so you're positive.
Of course, always.
Yes.
We have to find the solution. That's why this
Absolutely.
industry is.
Yeah. And please, Michaelis.
Well, let me say that since last month, the world has changed. Now we are talking about a world that competitiveness will be the #1 quality that you should have. No matter how green you are, no matter how socially responsible you are, no matter how you give back to the society, only one thing will count. And if we understand that, then we are going to remain on track in Europe. If we don't realize that even our closer partner in all the innovative policies has abstained from that, and by the election of Mr. Trump is focusing on competitiveness and only competitiveness, then we are going to fail. George said rightly that all the last years we are discussing a lot, but we are producing a little. Of course, we believe that we are competitive in the local present, in the present market, and where we are now, in the Eastern Mediterranean. We wouldn't be competitive with the same operation if we were in the Far East. With the same salaries, with the same environmental rules, with the same regulations for work, for the safety of our workers. I have to tell you an example. In the Middle East, the shipyards are working up to the air atmosphere to be 49 degrees. In Greece, during last summer, in mid-July till mid-August, we were working 2 to 3 days per hour because of the extreme heat and the weather conditions, according to the rules. So if we don't focus on how to become competitive, and we only focus how to absorb European funds, in order to absorb them, in order to have a stamp of a greener or a more socially responsible, then we are going to fail. At the end of the day, we have to make sense for John to bring his next order in a European shipyard instead of addressing a Chinese or a Korean shipyard for his needs.
Okay. So actually, I have so you touched on this, and so question for John and Farid. So, you know, do you think, you know, let's take the example of the Greek shipyard, but also Europe, globally speaking, you know, are they, you know, competitive against the Asian shipyard, I guess in terms of cost, but, you know, and I think maybe you mentioned about, you know, maybe not, but, you know, then what sort of like makes a difference, or what would make the difference for you to go in a Greek shipyard or instead of going to an Asian shipyard?
Well, besides wanting naturally to support my home country,
Yeah, absolutely.
thinking as a robot, you know, purely numbers. So, you know, obviously, you know, China has been said way more competitive. I'll give you an example. You know, during we do this whole silicon program, you know, for our fleet. Literally, China and A-rated China, right? COSCO shipyards or, you know, these top shipyards are literally 50% cheaper than here. 50%, a half price. So also on steel. But, you know, obviously the canal closure has favored a lot the European shipyards because, you know, the East-West link has been the say, or has been diminished. And Greece is a very competitive, let's say, European or Western, let's say, from the Western environment, they remain very competitive, having seen the numbers. I'm not a big client because many times I was happy to see that the slots were full, so I'm very happy for you for that. And we had to go in somewhere else in the area, but still, it is, they were all in the vicinity. So, I'm just talking about Mediterranean shipyards more, not so much northern shipyards. Shipyards in the Americas are way less productive and very expensive as well.
Yeah.
So, in the West, that's it.
Okay.
It's amazing. We have the whole Western world, and that's what we have. So it's an amazing opportunity for these two shipyards to flourish and do extremely well. But labor is an issue, and that's where the Chinese shipyards are at a huge competitive advantage, not only versus us, versus the Koreans, versus the Japanese, versus everyone. And I cannot see a way forward to beat this. I think will be discussed later. So maybe focusing on higher value services, higher value products that take advantage of our, let's say, competitive strengths. And for example, some more specialized vessels, more technologically advanced vessels. So maybe that is a solution where we can, be more competitive.
Okay.
So that's an opinion. Of course, I'm not an expert.
Okay, thank you. And then before we will hear from Farid, and then I'll give you. Yeah. Farid, do you want to say something about
Quick word. I fully agree that competitiveness is the first criteria to decide. I mean, shipping is no secret, an extremely competitive market. But if we put aside the cost, which is a reality, it's less expensive elsewhere. Maybe there is area also that needs to be looked at, and that could be some way of progress for Europe. I'm coming back to the question of agility and flexibility. Maybe also sometimes we need to look at the way shipyard responds to business opportunities for example, the number of weeks to answer a tender, flexibility due to when to do the dry dock, at what time, and how to adapt to sometimes extremely challenging supply chain and changing schedules. So I think agility in time also could be also a way forward to progress and to keep some competitiveness in Europe, because as we all say, positioning is still critical. And sometimes having the right positioning in Europe is something that could have extreme value if it's in the right context and the right way to grasp business opportunities. So that would be adding a comment on the question of cost. And also, of course, as has been said rightly, Asian yards are competitive and professional as well. So it will be a hard competition.
Thank you. Then, Boyford.
I don't want to say a lot of things, but I want to say one thing. We must change the mentality of the European people vis-à-vis the shipyards. If you go to a French shipyard, let's say that is producing aluminum, like Naval Group or OCEA, and you enter the yard, you will feel that you are in a century operation house. Everything is clean, everything is recycling, etc. This is the first step that we have to do in order to find space. If you see how was Syros Island, while the shipyard was idle, there were mountains of, πώς το λέγανε αυτό το πράγμα που πετάξαμε, of sandblast. The first thing that they did is to clean the environment over there. And now if you enter the shipyard, you feel like you went to a green area. I went yesterday to Scaramanga, just for this reception of these small enterprises, the group of enterprises I can make successful. Before Procopiou and before Miltiades went there, you could not go with your shoes, the shoes that you wear. Now it was very pleasant. I have to tell you that it was fantastic. This is somehow like we need space. This is why we cannot be competitive. the more the vessels we have, etc. At this very moment, even at this very moment, if we will use all the shipyards in Mediterranean, we won't be able to cover the 1% of the world fleet. That is to say, I think that we know how to improve the performance. Here he is, here he is, they are here, all right?
Yeah.
If you see the numbers, a lot of money, a lot of profits. If there is something to invest in Greece, is invest in the shipyards. You are going to make money, for sure.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So we're going to move quickly, to...
We can talk later.
Yeah. Indeed.
The fact that this is what, I came here to share this.
Oh, yeah.
Philippe,
You can make
Follow
an
the
offer,
money.
don't worry, you can make an offer.
je suis venu ici pour ça, hein, voilà. Non, ça c'est pas pour toi. C'est pour notre ami là-bas. Nikos, elle est partie.
Okay. Being conscious of time, so we'll switch to topic number 4 because we did cover, basically, I think so. If I can summarize as well, so the shipyard are competitive, including Scamangas and Onyx, and obviously possibly more expensive, than the Asian shipyard, but they have the location. Obviously, is also Suez Canal closure as well is helping. But with some investment, they can actually fulfill the declining, especially on the Atlantic so far. So I'll switch to topic number 4. So I think we touched a little bit on this as well, and so the question is like, are you sufficiently equipped, to basically meet the potential demand, and so do you need to invest, and in what? And how, what are the obstacles for that investment in order to meet that future business opportunity? Please first.
As said, we have already invested 125 million plus euros, and our plan is to invest hundreds of millions in order to sustain in this business by increasing our capex, means increasing our capacity, capabilities, and also moving to new technologies. This is what we are trying to achieve. Again, we have a paradox here, which is the last 5 years, whatever we have done, we did it with our money. There are no incentives, no funds, no grants, nothing. I mean, in Europe and in Greece, you can get grants for doing anything except shipbuilding, ship repairing. During the last 30 years, we have seen the sector in Europe and Greece have all the grants needed, incentives, money flowing, contracts, everything was flexible, and everything was bankrupted. Now we move to the other way around, the other side of the river, where there is no money, we do it by ourselves. But in the past, in the history, because we're talking about massive investments, everything had happened from the state or from the banks. I'm not asking for money, we're gonna do what we have to do, but I'm saying if we want to run faster and to create more jobs, we have to think to create a different framework and to attract all the capital needed, because it should be between the state and the shipyards, because it's not only what we do. We have to move forward to new things. And new things is to be able, as shipyards, to transform ourselves to hubs of technology and green technologies and equipment, and to be manufacturers, R&D manufacturers, or an ecosystem where, I mean, we already do that, but we need to do it in bigger scale, because we have to be able to produce in Europe all the needed equipment for this green transition. Otherwise, we just do the part of installments, some services, which is low level of offering and no high added value, because cost is a cost, but high added services or equipment is the other part of being more competitive.
Okay. Michaelis, do you want to add something?
Well, two things. The one thing, okay, we have excellent equipment and we are always investing, as I told you, to our infrastructure. The one thing is level playing field. As John said before, we have to make sure that we are working on a level playing field, which I'm not sure that this is our political decision, neither in Greece, neither in Europe. And the second thing is we are competing with countries and entities that they bend the state aid rules. State aid for Skaramagas is different from other shipyards in Greece, is different from other shipyards in Europe, and definitely totally different from other shipyards in Middle East or Asia, where heavy guarantees coming from the state, from the export banks, from heavy state investments are following this operation. And since it's a critical infrastructure to maintain what has been one of the, I think, the only European success in such a kind and magnitude, and this is the European shipping, because it's the only area where Europe has 50% plus of the world market. There is no other area. Airbus is maybe one very good example, but limited to that. We have definitely to bring back state aid and interventions, not by undermining the competitiveness, as Panos said, but promoting competitiveness in the shipbuilding industry. Otherwise, we are going to be obsolete, I'm sure for that.
Question for you. You mentioned capital, and George mentioned that the yard is full. Your yard are full as well. So most likely the number must be good. Do you think with maybe 1 or 2 years of good financials, listing could be a possibility, or like has been done by I think Mr. Marinakis, raising a bond in the domestic Greek market? Is that a possibility, you think?
To get listed?
Listed, yeah, listing, or tapping the bond market, including the Greek bond market, which has been done successfully.
No offense with public companies, but the thing is that it's become too bureaucratic. So a listed company has no flexibility, and you cannot be an innovative entrepreneur when you are listed. So even that, at least for me, plays a big role on a decision to move forward, because we need flexibility there too.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day, we have to be flexible because, as said from all the previous speakers, we are in international business, and shipping is different from shipyards in that aspect. Because shipyards, my view is that should be an extension of the shipping industry, but at that point it's still a part of the local industry, which is bad for shipyards. So if we change the legislation and everything will be more flexible in order to be able to operate and offer to the ship owners what they need, then it's a different environment, and get listed is much easier. But now, because we have to change the legislation, everything is in a moving puzzle.
Fair enough. Okay. So I guess you will count for the time being. You count on bank.
Bank our money and growing the business.
Well, thank God we are having the backup of Mr. Prokopiou, who has so far he's investing himself on the shipyard.
Big bank.
And this is very courageous and very patriotic, in my view, that he's putting his own money in making and putting back in life this huge infrastructure. We haven't seen that happening in the past, and I don't think that it's going to be replicated. We are working on a single man's, let's say, financing. And from that side, that makes us very cautious to spend every single euro at the right direction and not fulfilling what would like to see either the investment community, which is, big fusses, greener, becoming greener, or, more socially responsible. And on the other side, what would be, let's say, the dangers of overexposure to financing that has been also undermining in the past the viability of the shipyard.
Yeah.
I have, please, ask me.
Yeah, so we are moving, so I mentioned your presentation from you, so as a special question to you, as I mentioned to when I introduced you, XRTC, produced a very good report on the Greek ferry market, and so we gonna benefit from your expertise here. I was reading your report, 86% of the fleet, is 20 years old and plus. Given, again, the environmental agenda coming up, how do you see, the Greek ferry market and more generally speaking, the Mediterranean, how do you see them coping, with that regulation? How's it going?
The reason that we issued this report 23 years before, it was Michel, that he was working in the Affaires Maritimes in the embassy. So this is how we started, just to show the connection that we have together. Before I will answer this question, I want to recommend to Mr. Xenopanos, my friend Xenokostas, that he needs a good advisor about listing or not listing. But I will tell him later on this matter. As far as...
You have any proposal?
As far as my... why you are seeking proposal as long as you are negative about listing? Because I see CMA, CGM that have been in Marseille, and I hope that sometimes will invite us to have another conference over there, Farid, because Farid, apart of other things, in the main lobby, in the main restaurant of the CMA, CGM, you eat properly and fantastically. I won't forget this. I was with Credilione making the seminar in '94. Anyhow, when you become a grandfather, you have a lot of stories, Philip, to say. So, going back to Mr. Varvitsiotis, I have to tell him that the success of any Greek ship owner is how to leverage well his money. And this is why you are between two bankers. You appear there in the middle, but over there is a big banker, and me, I'm just an old one. So, ladies and gentlemen,
when it comes to shipping, because now we are talking about industry,
yes,
heavy industry in a country that actually demise heavy industry.
Yes, but the prospects that we have,
to be frank,
the prospects that we have in order to improve the efficiency of the European shipyards exist, and they are very challenging. Mm-hmm. And this is something that we strongly believe. And this is why you move from politics to something realistic. And you are showing now.
And very inspiring, inspiring,
bravo,
to tell you
very
the truth.
Inspiring. So going back now to the ferry sector, I have to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that unfortunately Europe has lost the train. And I'm saying that being very close with the major ferry operators of Europe, not only the Greeks and the Italians. I'm saying that because in the major part of the ferry operators in Greece, we don't have a person that has invested his money to run the company. And on the other side, as it used to be, as we had in the past, and on the other side, in European matters, we've seen that neither Fincantieri exists, although Rina is one of the best, not to say anything bad about BV, one of the best classifications on the passenger sector, and the capacity of the northern shipyards, including Germany and Scandinavia, are really extremely weak. I'm telling you, having lost a lot of money going around, because me, I'm not Prokopiou, I'm George, another George though. Having spent about 3.5 years visiting any single designer and any single small shipyard in Europe, I have to tell you that there is always the same thing. Discussing, inability to work together, inability to understand where and how and where is the opportunity and how we can make a team up in order to go one step further. We do not need at this very moment to discover how we build the ships. We know. And we know the new systems. And if we don't know them, go to the East to find them. Because the East, what they did, they took from France the best thing, they took from Germany the other, from Greece the other, etc. They combined together, they got all our executives to work there together. They established a very big development, R&D development center. One of them is Dari with 3,500 scientists working all of them together in order to sell what? European products. And to develop what?
What they deliver at the end of the day? What was the end?
No.
Was at the level of the European yard?
I will tell you, it is more or less it is this, because they have the stamp of Bureau Veritas. And me, I don't care about this. I care about the stamp, your stamp. If you question yourself about this,
No, I'm not questioning about.
and you know something, at this very moment, this is why I'm not promoting the Chinese shipyards. I'm telling you, however, how we must think. And if and when you see that the 61% of the orders on the dry cargo of the Greeks that we know are in China, as opposed to 5% that it was 20 years ago. No, I'm saying, on the ferries now, who are the designers on the new ferries that they are building up? Did you see the Grimaldi's vessels that are going to come into the Greek waters? Do you think that the major European ferry operators does not know where to build? Why Annek Lines, why Attica Lines, they hire now, on a bare boat, 2 of the Stena new buildings that they ordered 12. And at this very moment, I'm saying, my target is to make Miltiades understanding that we must build here 20 vessels of about 100 to 130 vessels. Do you know what is the answer of the principals of the Greek shipyards, including Xenokostas? Show me the cash flow. Show me the cash flow. Because at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, the cash flow doesn't come from the journalists. Doesn't come from the complaints that we have in the big titles every July because they don't have anything else to write. That the tickets are expensive. Why they do not write anything that the ships are empty in February and therefore, or in December? Why they don't write about the responsibility for not considering the private investment on the ferries in European markets as a public service coming from a private investor? However, I'm very, what can I say? I'm very optimistic because there are certain things that we can deliver and we can go developing an innovative public-private partnership model, which we are doing all together, Xenokostas, with the union that we made together. I'm participating in his meeting, and the Miltiades will come. Green transition of Greece's ferry fleet financed from the Recovery and the Resilience Fund. We have spending the Association of Banking and Financial Executives. Don't laugh, because the banks, the Greek banks, they are not in there. They do not support the financing of the ferries. And I'm afraid that we, the French bankers, the most specialized in the passenger market, we sustain. Even Bureau Veritas sustained, not so much.
Okay, so I guess...
So, and the third one is, of course, that what we want in order to invest there as ferry owners, I'm not, but I pretend that I am, what we want is we want the state to move on the electrification of the ports, because this is going to be a main drive to bring us all together. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't want anymore to hear anything from European politicians that we rely on the development of shipping, on the levies that we're going to put on the ECI, ECCII, whatever it is, in order, all this abbreviation, in order to survive as politicians. We have to survive as users, not users, as people that we respect what the international supply chain means.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. So more cash flow, more Greek banks as well, helping on the ferry.
Yeah.
And, they should be right, or should be sorted out. Hopefully ordering as well,
In Greece.
in Greece,
They are ready
and Scarmon, yes.
everybody to
We're
make
looking forward to that. And so we'll, basically ahead of time. So, but very last question, and the last question was about, how can the governments and the EU and the local, can help. And since we don't have time anymore, but you mentioned about something which was very interesting about the lack of welder, and this is what we obviously we're financing a lot of a cruise vessel, and when we visit Chantier d'Atlantique, Fincantieri, Meyer Werft, we keep on hearing that as well. So do you think here there's something that can be done by the government in Europe, France, Italy or Greece, actually to help and incentivize more skilled labor, more students going into this type of very skilled jobs to help you? Is that a solution for you?
The biggest thing, people are moving out of the technical studies and they go in the more fancy ones. It used to be marketing. On my age, a lot of people were moving to marketing. Nowadays, they are going to digital.
Coding,
Especially social media, content creators and things like that.
Yeah, because
No. In all aspects. A lot of in tourism, especially in our country, people love to work only 6 months a year. Yes, and this is the truth about the tourism sector. And there isn't any promotion whatsoever of the technical studies and the payoff of the technical study. And what has happened, if you see the curve of how the technical workers in Europe, people from 18 to 24, I think on a European average, 8% they are addressed to construction business and technical works. This is the EU average. In Greece is only 3%. 3% of the people from 18 to 24.
So do you think the Ministry
And
of
that
Education
means
should help?
in all the construction, including manufacturing. This is scarcity. If you accumulate to that the fact that we are getting older, we have fewer young people on a yearly basis. I think that definitely in order to maintain any manufacturing capability in Europe, we need to import a lot of working hands. And that will definitely increase what we see as political implication, the anti-immigration rule. Personally, I try to do it with Egypt.
You made it.
I made
Thanks
it.
God, and we pick up the...
No. And actually, 2 years after we signed the agreement with Egypt in order to bring farmers and seasonal workers, the idea was also to expand it into other areas like construction. This agreement hasn't actually worked. Not even a single worker has came over due to this agreement. And we are still open into violating our migration law from illegal workers all over Europe. And we have actually left the decision to those people who want to come, whether they are coming. We are not doing the reverse, let's say, process, which is we decide who we want to welcome in Europe and who we would like to see them as neighborhoods, in our neighborhoods, in our villages, and in our offices, and in our yards, shipyards or field.
Okay, thank you. A few words, maybe?
First of all,
Yeah.
this is a global issue. It's not just Greece or Europe, it's United States, even Korea. We have seen that all over the world. There's a shortage in manpower. What we have done so far is we have established in Syros and LFC now our own technical school in order to train them, train young people, and try to promote it alongside with the Ministry of Labor and Ministry of Education. So we have less than a bit less of like 92 students, which is okay, which is great because it's the beginning, but we are lacking of thousands of workers. So we plan to upgrade these technical schools to academic, trying to hit this problem internally, I mean nationally, by attracting new people, but at the same time bringing people from other countries and train them. Because even if you bring people from other countries, that does not mean that they know how to work or what to do. So first is training and attract people. The second is that to incentivize by, again, going back to what I mentioned earlier, is that shipyards are the extension of the shipbuilding, of the shipping industry. That means that we need flexibility. That means that we have to change the legislation in Greece and in Europe regarding the non-salary cost. This is a main problem in order to be more competitive. So if the question is, do we need industry back in Greece and Europe? We have to change the framework. If we do not, we cannot solve it. So two things. We bring people and then we change the legislation from the framework about the no-salary cost.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Right, I think, we...
And use your own technology. The
And?
European technology needs to be used.
Before we go on a coffee break, if someone has maybe a question, to the panelists. Yeah, there we go.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah, good. Thanks for that. I just wanted to point out that the threat to the European shipbuilding or ship repair or shore-based shipping industry is not just from the Far East, but increasingly it is coming from the US realization that they need to support this industry much more than they have been supporting. And we're seeing some convergence between South Korean and the US shipbuilding industry. A lot of that hinges on the automation and the robotics, which address the obstacle of the salary and the technical knowledge. So I'm just pointing out that if we look to the future, we should also be looking west as much as east. And this is an example of Europe having put itself in an untenable position in the middle of two very big, let's say, geopolitical agendas. And the sooner we realize that, the more it will help us to position ourselves more appropriately. But we should have a 360 view and not just a reflex to look only in one direction. Thank you very much.
Allow me to point out that for me, the only threat for European shipbuilding and ship repair industry is Europe itself. How we react to what happens globally, because we're talking about the national market. So it's what we do. That's the only threat I see.
And could be a bit the south of Greece, south of Europe, North Africa, and West Africa in later.
Okay, thank you. Coffee break? Okay, thank you very much. So please applaud our panelists. Thanks.
So, good evening from my side as well, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to the second part of our forum. On this session, we'll focus on the alternative fuels, and in a way, we'll try to run a reality check what it is available today. Before we start our panel with our distinguished guests, I would like to welcome in the floor the Technology Innovation Director of Bureau Veritas in Southeast Europe, Black Sea and Adriatic Zone, Mr. Vasilis Zimoulas, who had prepared a presentation about some decarbonization studies and the trajectory we are having now at hand, and that will be a very useful info and food for thought to continue the discussion later. Vasilis, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Payet. Thank you, Mr. President, and the invitation. It's always a pleasure to be with CCI. If we can load the slide deck, please. Okay. My task here today, and as a start to the panel that will be led by Payet of the distinguished guests, and since the title is a reality check, I would like to present to you an independent study that Bureau Veritas has performed. First of all, what we try to do is see if the IMO goals for decarbonization of shipping can be met, and then, if they can be met, how this is possible to be done. This initiative was done by an organization, internal organization, which in Bureau Veritas we call the Future Shipping Team, an initiative, an internal organization of experts, worldwide experts that are connected, and we share information between us on the projects that we run, on new technologies in shipping. And at the same time, we involve what we have the luck to have in the group, besides marine and offshore, also capabilities and knowledge in the industry, in the fuels, and other industries on land like nuclear. So going into the subject at hand, we start with a few reminders. Decarbonization of shipping is driven by the international willingness to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, which were started with the Paris Agreement and the broad goals that we need to reduce, to limit the increase of the average temperature to below 2 degrees compared to pre-industrial levels, and also at the same time try to increase it not more than 1.5 degrees. I have the impression that recent information may have proven that 1.5 may not be possible anymore. But also this overall goal was re-established again during the latest COP28 and COP29 that introduced some more practical, let's say, midterm goals, like, for example, that by 2030, compared to 2019, the global greenhouse gas emissions to be cut, and also to introduce increased mixture of green energy within the energy mix of the industry. So reminding briefly also what the goals of the IMO are, they were mentioned earlier also by the Minister. By 2030, the goal of the IMO right now is to reduce the greenhouse CO2 emissions per transport world by at least 40% compared to 2008. At the same time, to strive for an uptake of zero, near zero greenhouse gas emission technologies and fuels for at least 5%, striving for 10%. To reduce the greenhouse gas emission for shipping overall by 20%, striving for 30%. 10 years later, then, the goal is to reach the global greenhouse gas emission from shipping to at least 70%, striving for 80%. And last, by 2050, to reduce to zero or close to zero. Objectives of our study. First of all, we wanted to calculate, as we said, how, or whether or not and how, what are the scenarios, possible scenarios for shipping to reach net zero by decarbonization on a worldwide perspective. Again, to try to explore the possibility to reach the Paris Agreement goal of 1.5 degrees Celsius with what corresponds to shipping emissions. Last and most importantly, to try to examine what are the input parameters, what are the most important aspects that we have to observe in order to achieve this. So, can we do it, and how can we do it? To do that, we follow the bottom-up approach. I will not stay too long on the methodology. It's a lot of mathematics, but we said that we have a starting point, we have an arrival point, we have to examine what are the most important factors that are important to observe and to examine in order to reach what we want to arrive from where we are. So you can see these important factors here, which were blended together into 5 scenarios. First one is business as usual, what we do now with transport work being increased, and then a combination of these factors, which, as you say, it's transport work, it's speed reduction, it's waiting time reduction, technical efficiency improvement, and finally uptake of renewable and low carbon fuels. After the business as usual scenario, we have 4 scenarios with combination of importance or uptake of these factors. For example, the first 2 ones are not so progressive, while the last 2 are more progressive. We have an example of the 2030 crest, what we say this scenario, which assumes that the transport work will reach a crest in 2030, but may start to diminish, mainly because decarbonization of the industry might reduce the need to transport fossil fuels. Of course, the alternative fuels will also need to be transported, but maybe the need for transportation will be less because production will be spread around the world and not necessarily only in oil and gas producing countries. The last scenario, of course, is a very optimistic one, where everything will be done in the best way possible. So going straight to the results. So these are the trajectories that we came up with for these 5 scenarios. You can see them here overlaid over the IMO goals. Starting with the business as usual, it's interesting to see that if we continue with business as usual, we are indeed very close to the upper limit of the 2030 limits, of the 2030 goals. But after that, if we don't introduce new technologies and new fuels, it's not possible, of course, to reach the targets. Of the other 4 scenarios, the first 2 will not reach the 2050 goals, while the last 2 are very close or reaching the 2050 goals. The last very important observation here is that for all 4 scenarios that are coming close to the 2050 goals, in order to reach them, we need to overachieve the 2030 goals, which means that we have to start doing something now with what we have available. And we'll see what that may be. Regarding fuels, we examined and we saw that, as we said, we need to start doing things now. So we need, for the first 10 years, a drastic reduction of the consumption of whatever we are burning, whether it is fossil or alternative. So all fuels need to be reduced in consumption. Efficiency has to be improved. We see first an uptake as they become available of more bio-related fuels like biodiesel or biogas. And after beyond 2035, the share of e-fuels, hydrogen-based fuels, is increasing rapidly. What I believe is the most important slide of what I'm going to show you is this one. As we said, we examined all the factors that we have to factor in to create these trajectories. So what we try to do is quantify the impact of the uncertainty of each factor to create what we said, what we named as the importance factor. To make a long story short, you can see in the graph what are the most significant factors that will play a role in decarbonization. And you can see that they are not fuel related. It's decreasing speed. Of course, okay, the biofuel uptake is something, but also improvements in the technical efficiency of the vessels and decreasing waiting time at port. So all these are things that have a reduced uncertainty. There are things that we can do now. They are there, and we have to do them in order to be able to come to a level where when the green fuels will be available, they will be able to contribute. Otherwise, we will not be able to reach the 2050 goals. As feedstocks are very hard to find, it's important also this slide to show that resources are limited and are shared within many industries. So what we try to do here is to see what, for each scenario that we examined, what will be the needed share of feedstock for the shipping industry in order to achieve or follow this scenario. So the feedstocks are biomass, hydrogen for hydrogen fuel, and carbon dioxide for example, synthetic methane or synthetic methanol, and renewable electricity. As it's obvious, in the most optimistic scenarios, the share of these feedstocks that shipping will have to delve into is the highest. It's also interesting to see that the 2030 crest, where it's the scenario where the transport world will be reduced, this share is quite much lower. Finally, we try to see, as we said, using the analysis that we do, and based on each scenario, whether or not we will be able to be in line with the Paris Agreement goals. The good news from this slide is that for all scenarios fall within the 1.5 and 2 degrees. And this is based on an assumption of the carbon budget, which means all the emissions, the total emissions that shipping will have to emit, let's say, compared to the carbon budget to be emitted by all industries, in order to be able to reach the Paris Agreement goals. So the good news about this slide is that even if shipping will not be able to reach 2050 goals, which are the first two scenarios, we would already have done our share to reach the Paris Agreement goals based on the percentage of emissions shared by shipping compared to the rest of the industry. So this was a short summary. This study is on our website. It can be downloaded, it can be read. If you want to delve into the details of the methodology, and our colleagues from the Future Shipping team that were actually involved in doing this, will be very happy to answer your questions. Thank you very much. They're also outside for you to collect. Yes, okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Vasilis. So, welcome to our panel discussion. As the shipping industry is undertaking the considerable challenge of significantly decarbonize its operation, alternative fuels like hydrogen or ammonia or methanol have been acclaimed as the future of maritime energy, as the only way to reduce the greenhouse gases emission of our industry. But while the dream of Greek shipping is captivating, the reality can feel like trying, allow me to exaggerate a little bit, to cross the Atlantic with a paddle boat. Exciting, I would say, but full of challenges. We have seen a lot of studies, we have seen a lot of forums, we have seen a lot of debates for and against a specific fuel, try to promote a fuel as a silver bullet, but at the end, we all conclude that there is no silver bullet for the future. Our industry, more and more, has realized that we are moving to a multi-fuel environment, and the choice will depend on several factors, like the type of the vessel, the trade of the vessel, and the size. As a class society that I'm working for, Bureau Veritas, I have to admit that our focus is mostly on the safety aspect. So more of our studies, rule and regulation we are producing are to make sure that the fuels are properly bunkered or handled safely on board the vessel. And we assume that the alternative fuels are available there to be bunkered. So today, we have a distinguished panel who will tackle some burning questions in an effort to perform, allow me to say, a reality check on alternative fuel status. What is there? What will be there in the coming days? Where? How much it will cost? And just to question ourselves, is this a reality or we are simply chasing an utopia? So allow me to introduce the distinguished panelists that will discuss all this hot topic by starting with Mr. Konstantinos Kapetanakis, Managing Bunkering Director of Starbulk and Shareholder of Ibia. Yes. Welcome, Konstantinos. Then Ms. Irini Arvanitaki, Managing Director of Vessel Performance Solution. Welcome.
Thank you.
Mr. George Perazakis, Technical Director of Dynacom Tankers Management. Ms. Katerina Prifti, Head of SSQE and DPA of Lascaridis Shipping. And Mr. Kostas Polidakis, CEO of Marine and Mercuria Energy and Head of Shipping of Minerva Bunkering and Mercurian Energy. As you have seen, we have a very diversified panel. Gender equality has been assured, and I have tried to call the speakers by putting... So, let's start with what it is available today, and I will come and sit down close to you, but I want to put the first question first. And what we have available today, of course, is fossil fuel, mainly fuel, distilleries, and LNG. So, looking at the picture and the continuous investments we see from the oil major in fossil fuels, it is foreseen that the fossil fuels will remain and will be available for a long time. So, George, Mr. Perazakis, for you, as the technical director of a major shipping company, that has also been the newsmaker for the last 1 or 2 years every week, as the company has placed more than 100 new buildings, and all of them are conventional fuels. I would like to have your opinion about how long the fossil fuels will be available and how long will dominate this market. And also, if you believe that the carbon capture will grow in the future and will be in a position to prolong the usage of fossil fuels.
Thank you.
You have...
It's not working.
It's not working.
Okay.
Okay.
No problem. So thank you for this difficult question. It's impossible to reply. But yes, the fact is that if we take the world fleet, it is very easy to understand that almost more than 2/3 of the existing fleet will not be able to be adapted or modified to burn any new fuel. So that means the current fleet will require to have fossil fuels for the foreseeable future. Now, of course, this cannot be maintained for a long time, but that means that the biofuels will be mainly the main source of fuel for the, let's say, the majority of the fleet. Of course, gas is always there, LNG. We have also a big chunk of these new ships. And gradually, there will be other solutions like methanol and ammonia in the future. But definitely for the years to come, a percentage of biofuel, starting with B25 or B30 later on, it will be more or less the easy solution for all the shipping companies to go ahead. So I think more or less this is the way forward. Not so, let's say, record-breaking and innovative, but more stable and at the same time more sustainable than before.
Thank you. Of course, it is very difficult to predict what will be the future. But even if this is a reality today, and although we see that there are a lot of efforts and the energy transition is progressive, but not at the level we wish to be, we start seeing increased taxation, new regulation like Fuel EU coming, or upcoming IMO measures. Katerina, let me come to you and go a step further. And let me ask your opinion. Do you believe that this taxation regulation are going to accelerate the uptake of alternative fuels?
Thank you, Ms. Paleologou. Thank you for the invitation, and the French Embassy also. Before I start, I would like to say congratulations to Bureau Veritas and Mr. Kokarakis, who brought together the wind-assisted propulsion experts, and we realized that 90% of them are French. So I don't know if this would be...
Thank you very much, and I will hope that you will be part of this initiative soon as a company.
So to reply to your question, indeed, yes, and this was the target of the policymakers, to push us forward, to push by the hard way, in the hard way, to the alternative fuels. So yes, the alternative fuels will be accelerated, and first of all, by the increase of the price of the fossil fuels, which is the number one. The second, it is that the biofuels and the alternative fuels, and I would like to agree with my colleague before, that the biofuels is the most popular that everyone now thinks, will be the one that we will select. So the other is that the increased taxation will give the signal to the market to invest in the alternative fuels. The third is that the technology also will be shifted to the R&D of those fuels. And fourth, it would be the supply chain that will be adapted, to this, to the new alternative fuels by renovating the infrastructure, by building more bunkering hubs, things like this. So we certainly agree that the target is this.
So we're talking about the necessity, the urge of alternative fuel in the maritime industry and the whole shipping industry. We're living on this decarbonization tone. But on the other hand, do we really believe that the governments and the regulatory bodies are doing enough to create a viable ecosystem for green fuel? Or all this burden unfairly has been placed to the ship owner and ship operators who are asked to innovate and make the environment for that? Irini, welcome, and may I have your views on that?
Yes, hello everyone, and thanks for inviting me for this panel. So as we already mentioned, there's a lot of regulation. There's a new regulation every year, as we heard earlier. And there's a lot of promotion of green fuels, that's for sure. But there's lack of standardization. And then from the perspective of performance management system supplier, where I come from, and it's our core business to keep up with those new regulations and make sure that we have in place all the tools to assist our clients. So it gets extremely complex even for us when there is so much new regulation coming up and there's no standardization. So I imagine how complex it must be for daily ship operations and ship owners to adapt to those changes. And not only that, but also make plans for new investments, new buildings, and so on. So there's very high complexity, and if we combine that with high costs, of course, for new fuels, lack of infrastructure, as we said, other storage, combustion, technology issues, safety issues. Of course, all that combined explains why we see some early adopters, but we don't really see the industry innovating and investing.
So in a way, things are happening, but most of the things which are happening are really have been initiated by the shipping industry itself, and the support of the government and the whole world needs to become more active in the future for us to lead there. And of course, as George and Katerina mentioned, where conventional vessel will exist, and everybody is considering that the logical step is to move towards sustainable form of this fuel, like biofuel, biodiesel, bio-LNG. All of them can be used in the existing engines without any capex, without any modification, and this is a major advantage. Constantine, as the bunkering director of the biggest listed dry company, are such fuel included in your strategy? I'm sure you have studied a lot this market, and how do you see this market evolving in the future? And what about the effect that competition from other industry, like aviation, will have on the biofuels mainly?
Yes. Thank you, Payet. We've been talking for about 10 minutes and we mentioned more than 20 challenges. And it's only 10 minutes. We still have about an hour. The problem is, as you said in your introduction, that we may be perceived as chasing a utopia. And for my part, I will tell you that we are chasing a utopia. The problem is that the alternative is to accept a dystopia. So the dilemma is really a false one. Will we embark on a trip which has amazingly a lot of some insurpassable challenges, or will we just accept that this is the way we're going to go? And I think that the answer is self-evident to all of us. Regulations is the number one. Future fuels is not number two. Number two is what we can do with the existing fleet. The existing fleet will not disappear. We haven't figured out a way to make tens of thousands of ships which still have more than 15 years of age disappear. So we should be not only realistic, but we should be sincere to the people who listen to us. So the first is to make our existing ships more efficient. And we are, gradually. We heard from the yards, we hear from technological institutions, we hear from R&D sources. The third is what we can do about future fuels. So future fuels are there, they're not future, their technological maturity is future for some of them. Biofuels are here, and I would dare say that even at the B50 and B100 level, they are here, and they are a necessity because this is the only way, apart from LNG, we can comply with Fuel EU. So biofuels are indeed part of any company's strategy. The other is LNG, bio-LNG, for those who are able to consume this type of fuel. The third is pooling amongst companies or within the same company in order to satisfy the new measure. Mind you, this new measure as of January next year is immense. It is the only real first measure which aims to reduce emissions, unlike ETS. ETS is not reducing emissions. ETS is the polluter simply pays. Fuel EU is a real means of reducing emissions, and we certainly hope that IMO will soon adopt something similar, which will allow the EU to take it away. That's what they have said anyway. And the final one is to pay the fine, pay the penalty, which is not compliance, and which I hope that, if not nobody, but very, very few, will opt to do that. And even if they do, they will not be able to do it after 2030 when the penalty will be increased significantly. So as part of Starbucks' strategy, biofuels will indeed be part of the mix in order to be compliant with Fuel EU, in order to be compliant with all other measures that are hopefully coming. And with these measures, indeed, the regulations will provide soon for a levy, and this levy needs to be implemented in order to narrow the gap between the two sources of fuels. As for competition from other industries, the competition is real and it comes mostly, obviously, from aviation. SAF has made larger strides than shipping, but SAF, fortunately for shipping, somehow relies mostly on different type of feedstock. So there are serious competitors, but they're not the only ones because we also have the road transport industry. The road transport industry, and there are European regulations which call for B7, soon to be B14 of biofuels, are also a serious competitor. But I do not anticipate problems for the first 4 or 5 years because biofuels by then, until then, will be used purely as a drop-in. So I think it will be enough for shipping, provided, and we'll talk about this later, provided that the supply chain is clarified and does its homework. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Many of us in this room are engineers and in the early stage of our careers, or even now, we have passed reviewing drawings, optimizing design, and putting particular focus on that. So may I come to you, Kostas, and welcome. If we go a step further from the engineering point of view, do you see that the current designs and propulsion system are ready to fully integrate alternative fuels, or do we need a fundamental change in shipbuilding technology in order to adapt them?
Ready to integrate and paradigm shift are two extreme ends of the spectrum. I would argue that we're mostly towards the readily available than the paradigm shift in most of these cases. Starting with biofuels, as my co-panelists have already mentioned, they're absolutely, the technology is readily available. It's a poster boy drop-in fuel. We can use them. We've had experience with B24 and B30. There's been already significant experience with B50 and B100. There are maintenance and operational concerns, but they can be addressed, and we know how to address them. On the supply side, there's still issues with the current regulations which demand any blend above 25% to be carried with IMO2 tankers. But again, the technologies exist, and even that might be solved by MEPC 83, so we'll have more logistics capability. With regards then to LNG, again, it's definitely a mature technology. The technology exists on the consumption side. The technology exists on the logistics and supply side. So it is available. It needs to be scaled up, but it exists. With regards to methanol, again, the technology is available. We've had experience with first movers on methanol burning engines. So it is an existing technology. It needs to be refined. It needs to be scaled up. With regards to the logistics and supply side, again, it's just IMO2 chemical tankers. The engineering is here, and we've had experience carrying them as cargoes, so we can supply them as bunkers. And then that brings us to ammonia, which is where I wouldn't say it's a paradigm shift, but obviously there's a lot of room for improvement. We're at the stage on the engineering side with regards to propulsion, where we've moved from single-cylinder tests to full main engine tests and operations. And we know what the technology will look like. The regulatory framework is also developing. We've been through CCC 10 now, moving into MEPC 109, 110. So again, on the regulatory side, the technology is maturing. So in my opinion, the only shipbuilding technology which you might consider as a paradigm shift is nuclear. And well, even there might be voices saying that we already have more reactors on the water than we have on land, but nuclear warships and submarines and even icebreakers is a very different animal from the commercial merchant shipping applications that we will need to develop. So nuclear will be the true paradigm shift. It might be a generation away, but in terms of technology, that's, I think, the field that we don't yet have what we need to have.
Thank you very much, and that will bring me to the next question that I would like to address to all of you. We are definitely living in the fossil fuel reality, and the new energy sources start to emerge and will be there sooner or later. So if you have to reply to the question, which alternative fuel do you see as the most likely to be used in the year to come, and how you prioritize them? Which one will come first? Which one will come Second, and given the current uncertainty on which green fuels will dominate at the end of the day, how can ship owners future-proof their investment to avoid stranded assets? And I would like to ask with you, George.
Yes, as we discussed earlier on, of course, the shift will be gradual. So we will start with biodiesel and green energy eventually, and then we will move to more exotic fuels like methanol in a smaller percentage, perhaps, and green ammonia later on at a larger percentage. But nevertheless, will not be the majority of the fleet. Eventually, as Mr. Poldak said, nuclear will be one of the end solutions, but it's quite far away, considering the technology that is currently under development for the ships. So
It is far away because we need a maturity in our mind, or it is far away because the technology is not there?
We need the technology, although the technology is being built quite fast. But we need the legal framework for every country that will accept ships like that to sail. For example, New Zealand is a nuclear-free country, so you cannot have a nuclear power plant in New Zealand. The same, I think, applies also to Denmark. So this legal framework has to be developed, and as any legal framework, it will take a lot of time. So basically, this change will be very gradual. We have the feeling that we are a little bit delayed, and that the delay, therefore, especially methanol, green and green ammonia, is becoming obvious. The time frames are not achieved, and there seems to be a constant, let's say, postponement of milestones. But more or less, I think this is the way forward. Now, if you want to order a ship, I think the best way is to have a more traditional technology with the possibility of switching in the future. Definitely is a very critical time. Perhaps in 3, 4, 5 years from now, things will be more clear to decide. But I think this is the way forward for the time being.
Thank you. Katerina, can I have your views on that? And taking into consideration that very recently your company had ordered, Lavinia had ordered some MR tankers with methanol-ready notation. Is that, an indication that, do you feel that methanol will be the first one emerging in our market?
No, I don't think so. As my co-panelists mentioned, the biofuel is the number one that everyone from the 1st of January will think and will apply. And at this point, I would like to open a bracket only to mention the pooling, which is very important. Every company now out there, including us, I believe, and my colleagues, we're working to, instead of the fragmented philosophy of our industry, to come to pools. And this was proposed by our charterers also. So biofuels and pooling, it is the number one. Secondly, of course, would be LNG, but as my colleague also say, it is a mature technology. Then it would be methanol, which again, it is something that it is more, will become more popular in the future. Ammonia, but I would like to refer to nuclear. Nuclear is not so far as we believe. And I want to offer to the audience that recently we were invited by EMSA and another classification society to participate in the risk assessment for installation of nuclear to bikers. So our company offered the experience and what could have been, what will be affected by the nuclear, and a paper will be issued. We understand that several similar papers by EMSA are launched, so that means that Europe believes to this technology and supports and will support in the future.
Thank you. So, nuclear, I think it's, it's taking the lead up to now. Costa, what do you think?
Well, I think the order at which alternative fuels will be emerging and developing and expanding is ultimately linked to the relative cost of carbon abatement.
Mm-hmm.
So it is something which is changing and can change from regulatory pressures. The way things are right now, the order is what all my co-panelists have so far said. So obviously in terms of carbon abatement, biofuels is the cheapest solution, and this is why it's coming first. And then it's LNG. LNG either with the possibility to have a drop-in of bio-LNG, biomethane, or as part of the FuelEU Maritime pooling arrangements, where it gives a very big benefit for engines, modern engines with low methane slips that can take you all the way to 2039, 2040. So ultimately, yes, it's linked to the cost of carbon abatement, and if we have carbon taxes and we have a higher carbon pricing, this might fundamentally change.
For sure. We'll come back to LNG, because it is true that we have seen a big shift back to LNG again in our days, but I would like to hear first from Konstantinos and then from Irini, how they see.
Yes, I think I won't go into repeating the sequence of fuels. There are two first indispensable links to the chain. The first is once the IMO, once the IMO mandates a well-to-wake life cycle analysis, our discussion will change. The second link to the chain is once this is done, which fuel is green? So up to now, nothing is green. So up to now, for us to discuss whether methanol, ammonia, or LNG will come first, second, or third is a bit irrelevant. We have gray, we have brown, we have even pink, hydrogen mostly, for some strange reason, and we want green. Once the IMO says well to wake, then we will be focusing on the cost of green production. For now, green production projects are being tanked one after the other because they're extremely expensive, and those which are not being tanked are asking for off-take agreements with a minimum duration of 30 years, and those which get this go-ahead have a cost which is more than $2,000. So per ton equivalent energy. So to say which will come first or second needs to wait a bit. But as we stand today, technologically, the least mature by way of engine readiness is ammonia. The fact that recently, just a few hours ago, the Marine Safety Committee of the IMO published guidelines for the safe use of ammonia is a very positive development. This will be voted next year in the next Marine Safety Committee. So hopefully the fear surrounding the usage of ammonia will be alleviated up to a point. But that leaves the technological side, because we need the new engines and we need them tested first before they have a mass appeal. So methanol has, I'm not mentioning bio and LNG, they're here, so we know them, so they don't count as a new, they are existing. Methanol, yes, but methanol is still, as I said, very expensive, and we see projects from very well-known companies which tank their investments, alleging that they're not abandoning them, but they're just adding something to the mix, which is LNG, and which is fossil LNG, basically. So methanol will come, has a better maturity. Hydrogen, because no one has mentioned hydrogen, because apparently it doesn't have a lot to do with deep sea shipping, but will play a role in the coastal trading. I have to say something on nuclear, because nuclear was a taboo, but now it's getting into vogue. Nuclear is a solution which we all hope we will see in our lifetime. It's doubtful. I fully agree with Mr. Perazakis about the legal hurdles. These are often underplayed, but they are quite important. Technologically wise, I think we will see a better acceleration of this the technology. So in terms of 1, 2, 3, I'm sorry, I will not go into this path, but so far I think that although ammonia has very good characteristics, and I think that safety will be addressed properly, I think it falls a bit further down the line.
Thank you. Irene, you want something to add on the thoughts?
Yes, I think that we have covered a lot already. The message from our side, as we see it, is that we need to be prepared for short term, mid term, and long term. So right now we're talking about biofuels, and then in a few years we'll be talking more about ammonia for sure. And then later on, depending on technological breakthroughs we might not know of, then we will have other synthetic fuels. So that seems to be how this will be. But I would also like to mention the combination, and I would also like to mention wind as a fuel. We don't normally see it as a fuel, but I think it is. It cannot propel the vessel 100%, but it can do to a large extent. So I also see a lot of mix of alternative bunker fuel and with wind. That's also gaining a lot of traction.
Okay, that's true. Thank you so much. You have already, two people in this panel mentioned about that we have seen people that have been very attractive to ordering vessels on dual fuel methanol, have revised their appetite, and they turn towards the use of LNG as fuel. We have seen that from MSC, we have seen that from Maersk. I think we have seen that also from CMA, mostly on the container segment, because for the time being, these are the leaders more on the alternative fuel. They have a specific trade. They have passed an enormous good market, so they have the money to spend on this fuel. But looking at this shift, can we consider as a reality check a kind of realization that LNG is the only alternative fuel available? Costa, can I have your opinion on that? You were the first one mentioning this.
And you've mentioned it's mainly container ships. So yes, the order book right now is almost 50% alternative fuels. That's 50% on a tonnage basis, not a contract basis. And this is mostly large container ships, which make up this big tonnage. At the same time, in 2023, it was mainly methanol. Methanol was en vogue, as was already mentioned, and in 2024, we had this shift to LNG, so most of this 50% order book is now LNG. But this doesn't mean that methanol is dead, in the same way that LNG was not dead a couple of years ago when we had the extremely high gas prices and dual fuel engines, LNG dual fuel engines were being operated not on LNG, with the exception of LNG carriers, of course, where they have their boiler. But at the same time, a dual fuel vessel is an option. It gives you the optionality to burn LNG or methanol. It doesn't mean that you will be burning only that. So this is added optionality, expensive added optionality. At the same time, it's interesting to note about the other 50% of the order book, which is conventional fuels. And if we look at that in terms of contracts, it's 85% of the order book. So it's just 15% of the order book, which is dual fuel ships. 85% is conventional vessels. And out of that, even the conventional vessels, most of it is still containers. Because the bulk carrier and tanker order book is at a historic low right now. So the tankers and bulkers in terms of dual fuel optionality is very, very limited today. Limited. So the question comes here whether there's a big part of the owners' community that wish to wait. They wish to wait and see what the developments will be, rather than investing right now on this alternative optionality.
Thank you. And on top of that, availability, bunker relocation, infrastructure, has been always a question from the owners and the operator, especially when it comes to particular type of vessels, which are also not under time charter, maybe they are in the spot market. I'm sure, Konstantinos, from your position as bunkering director, but also from EBIA, this is something you follow up very closely. How do you see the development of bunker location in alternative fuels? And let's say, starting also from what all of you see as imminent, like biofuel, biodiesel, or other blends, because even for the LNG, I'm in the shipping industry 31 years. My real exposure to LNG was when I was in Paris in 2015-16. And the infrastructure is still moving very, very slowly. So how we expect to move?
That's a spot-on question, Payet. Yes, indeed, I am also the chair of the International Bunker Industry Association, which is an NGO with consultative status at the IMO, in existence for 32 years, with about 500 members from approximately 70 countries. Now, infrastructure is unfortunately downplayed a lot. And as you said, it's not moving as fast. So we do not only need, listen, the chain is this, we need producible fuels, new fuels. We need them to be safe, we need them to be technologically sound, we need to transport them, we need them to be cheap, or at least not so expensive, and we need to distribute them. So infrastructure has to do with what the current players are preparing and what the new players are contemplating. The bunker industry, the selling side, has to shape up big time. Otherwise, they will not be able to compete with the bigger trading houses of fuel cargo, of methanol producers, of ammonia producers, of hydrogen producers going forward. So they need to shape up. What they do, thankfully, is cooperate with big port authorities, such as the MPA, such as ARA, such as the International Association of Ports and Harbors. We at EBIA collect data from all of these, and we transmit information and try to influence the IMO as much as possible, so to make the infrastructure more practical. You mentioned, and I'm doing this very quickly to address your biofuel aspect. The IMO, the MPA basically, Singapore, which is the biggest bunkering port in the world, prohibits bunker barges from loading, conventional bunker barges, from loading more than B24 biofuels.
Okay.
This is an anomaly. They consider them. They consider that a chemical tanker needs to be in existence in order to carry more than B24, but they don't ask the same from a bulk carrier, which is to receive the B30 or the B50. So what we're trying to do, and we will do, is to convince the IMO that the bunker barges can accommodate the carriage, not usage, the carriage of biofuels. ARA is mandating MFMs, which means that fewer quantity disputes, hopefully, will be in existence. But the most important thing for the infrastructure part is the clarity in the supply chain. If we get biofuels, and this is where you guys come in, because you are the verifiers, and we will all be trusting you. So it needs a lot of work.
Yes.
Done.
So the news are not very promising from what we
have
hear.
something to work on.
Yes, for sure. Yes, it is a reality. This is what we are doing, actually, a reality check, George.
If you look at it from the point of view of the bunker supplier, if I may step in on
Of
that,
course,
we've
sure.
had a very interesting discussion in another panel on that.
Okay.
Because I represent a trading company, but at the same time we have a
Physical.
physical bunkering company. So the bunker supplier needs to have three things to establish a bunkering location. You need to have freight density. You need to be in a location where there's freight density. That's probably number one. You need to have cheap molecules, so you need to be close to where the supply is, and you have to have efficient logistics. So that's why we see all these alternative fuels coming up in the same, practically two ports, ARA and Singapore, because that's where you combine a very high freight density and you're close to the source. In order for that to change, and with alternative fuels, it could be different locations where you'll be closer to the sourcing, you need to have the demand signal, and that's not there. If you don't have the freight density and the demand signal, they will not be developed.
So that brings me to the next question, because a recent study from Global Maritime Forum showed that fuel producers will need to be reassured of high volume and long-term supply contracts to proceed with big investment, both in production, but also creating bunkering stations. Katerina, do you think that cooperation between companies or alliance of companies or with similar need is required, will be a necessity in the future to address this challenge?
Certainly, yes. Again, I will mention that although we are a fragmented industry, we need to join our forces in order to give to the fuel producers the signal that there is sufficient demand, so to make them to invest and to prepare the bunkering hubs and all the infrastructure. So first of all, the alliance is required in an organized way, and we have the pleasure to see alliances like coalition, like Maersk-led efforts. We have seen also the corridors a long time ago that, especially between Australia and China, these corridors are the first sign of coalition. By speaking about Australia, I would like to mention for Dampier, which is a very well-established ammonia. There is a big ammonia station, an ammonia plant, and this port is foreseen as a bunkering hub for ammonia to the remote Australia. But why? Because there is a lot of traffic between China and Australia for iron ore. By saying this, I can say that the market needs, of course, the alliances. First of all, to give the signal, as I said. Secondly, to invest in R&D, to show a lot of universities and research centers to be persuaded that they have to think more, and think tanks to emerge and provide solution to the producers of the engine, to the makers of the engines, because this, I think, as my colleague says, there is a challenge because, okay, if I have certainly to invest in dual fuel engines, but if they are so expensive, so difficult, so not yet mature technology, what to do? And then to my famous Mr. Xeradakis, as he said before, the financiers, that they have to be persuaded to invest. If we make alliance, he will be persuaded to find money for us, not only for the owners to invest, but also for the fuel producers and the ports to be to prepare this infrastructure.
Thank you. Somebody in our discussion about fuels before, which is going to be the priority, mentioned also that in new regulation we have also the very attractive principle of pooling. And with the Technology Innovation Department of Vasilis, we have performed several studies on this, running various examples on that. Irini, do you feel that this pooling initiative will be an attractive option for the ship owners that will be tried to using this surplus that will be created from other vessels using alternative fuels or biofuels to cover the remaining fleet of fuel oils? Because that will require collaboration, and it's not something that we see very often in the industry. It is a difficulty that we have.
Yes, pooling basically means that one can invest heavily on a very low carbon or zero carbon fuel on part of the fleet, and then take this compliant surplus and offset it to the other vessels that are relying on traditional fossil fuel. And so in this way, all the vessels will be compliant, while the owner can invest on the vessels that it makes more sense from a technology perspective, but also from an operational perspective, so on the route and the availability of the fuel. And I think it's a very attractive idea. And of course, it's only on the EU, so we would very much like to see that on
For the time
on
being,
IMO.
we never
Yes.
know.
But still, it's a very interesting measure, I think. By the way, you mentioned collaboration. So I think the biggest benefit here is that we see collaboration between own charterers. Reading the latest BIMCO clause about FuelEU, we see that they can collaborate in the pool. They can share costs this way, share benefits. And so that is something we expected for a long time to see, to have incentives on both sides to invest. So I think that's good. Yes.
Allow me to be a little picky in one of the fuel, and this fuel is ammonia, maybe the nastier one in terms of safety, but it is true that the last 1 year, even in Posidonia, last year, in June in Athens, we see the Chinese shipyard and the Korea promoting ammonia. I went to Gastech in Houston, all the Korean shipyards were promoting ammonia. And it is, obviously, it's very nasty in terms of safety, but maybe the cheapest one to be produced by using renewable. There are a lot of safety concerns, but on the other hand, we see companies like MSC Cargo or CBM that they clearly state that this is the pathway. And we have also seen, as you mentioned, green corridors from Australia to Japan on this. And I would like to address this question, I think, to the person in the panel who has more experience and who has studied the topic more than anybody else. And this is, of course, George Parazakis from his vast experience in his previous position. And I want to ask you, George, do you really see ammonia developing further as a marine fuel?
Ammonia has a certain great benefit. First of all, it's a zero carbon molecule. So from the time we start burning ammonia, we have no more carbon, theoretically speaking, because always we have pilot fuel. But the fact is that ammonia can be produced anywhere, as long as you have electricity, air, and water. So that means that under certain strategic planning, you can have the production of ammonia in places that have no other source of energy. Now, if we are going to green ammonia, we see that green ammonia mainly will be produced around the equator because the main production of ammonia will be based on solar and wind renewables. So countries like Saudi Arabia, Emirates, Egypt, even Mexico, are going to produce ammonia with the proper development of local projects. Ammonia has another benefit also, which is complementary. It's an advantage that will help develop a little bit faster, perhaps, in the future, is that ammonia is a complementary energy source, not energy source, energy storage for nuclear. So that means that you can have nuclear power plants working all the time, and when you don't have peak consumption, you can start to generate ammonia on the spot in order to store this extra energy. So ammonia can be also a storage molecule. The truth is that the big problem for ammonia as fuel is the toxicity. That means that we have to develop the technology, which is one thing, but then the biggest thing is how to train people on operating in ammonia. Already we have a huge problem locating people and crew that are capable of running LNG or even LPG fueled vessels. You can imagine that to find people capable of running ammonia vessels will be much harder. And so we need to start educating, we need to start training, we need to start promoting the idea of this fuel well in advance in order to have the people ready at the time needed. So yes, you can say that ammonia has a lot of benefits. It is going to be difficult, but not impossible. And we have to work very hard in order to achieve this goal. However, as we said before, under certain circumstances, it's one-way street. So the only thing is that how many resources we can allocate in order to develop the technology and do the necessary familiarization and training. And when I'm saying familiarization, it's not just the crew, it's the communities, it's the local port authorities, it's the governments, all these people that are involved in the risk assessments necessary for the bunkering, for the transportation, for the terminals. Until now, the ammonia trade was mainly carried out by highly skilled professionals that were dedicated to this. So it was a niche market. If we take something like that and we expand it to become global, then we have a lot of, all the issues are getting larger and more difficult to tackle. So yes, this is what we have to do.
Thank you. So it's not only the fuel, it's not only the technology. A very important, a key role is the workforce that will play a key role on this energy transition for whatever type of alternative fuel we're talking. And you mentioned about training, that this is going to be a very difficult exercise, but I would like your views also, Katerina, on that. What will be the necessary steps to prepare this workforce for the operational complexity, the safety complexities that they're going to face, and how easy it will be?
I will start from the end, because what my colleague, I fully agree, but what also needs to be done for the training, which is the number one, it is the training also of the office staff. We cannot ask only from the crew to be super educated and trained in order to cope with the risk, but also in office we have to train the people. So training is the number one, and so the training of the crew on board, the certification by STCW, which is something that IMO should think about and put in force. The third, it is the training of the people in office, which should not be affected in the hard way, but in the way after drills, after evaluating it, after first preparation of safety procedures of these fuels, and then yes, this, I think the training is the one that I can think.
Thank you. And really a very big concern that at the end of the day we'll consider that will be made the lighter thing to deal with. But will definitely be...
Can I mention
yes.
again for ammonia something? When in Dampier that I mentioned before, is a port, very active port with the ammonia
Which
plant.
one?
Dampier.
Dampier, yes, in
Australia. The port authorities invited the visitors, ourselves and then colleagues also from Starbuck, were together, were in the refugee station, in case of ammonia leakage. So it's the first time in my life that I understand that, okay, we're in an ammonia port, so the guys would like to secure us in the protected space. So yes, I think this risk is, as was said before, it's something to tackle.
Thank you. So far we have not talked about money, and I know that none of you has a crystal ball to make prediction, but there are several costs here combined to make up decarbonization costs, OPEX, CAPEX, carbon taxes, cost of fuel, as we mentioned. Costa, what is your, how do you see, how does an owner strike a balance between decarbonizing operation and managing the costs, which is a very big challenge?
Well, we all want to decarbonize, but at the same time, we're running a business. So at the end of the day, we need to make money or to create value for the shareholders. To be
If you want to make
more
money,
polite.
you can invest in the shipyard in Greece.
Yes, maybe. As well. So yeah, at the end of the day, we're here to make money. So we should look at numbers, as you're saying, and I think this is what the ship owners are doing, and this is driving investment decisions or decisions not to invest. So with regards to that, it's ultimately linked, as was mentioned before, to the relative cost of carbon abatement. So dollars per ton of carbon abated. This is, of course, also driven by how big the carrots and the sticks of the regulatory landscape are, and this is how this can change. But with what we have right now, the numbers are pretty much as follows. For biofuels, B30 has a carbon abatement cost of about $120, $150 per ton of CO2 abated. B30 is a very good example to use as a benchmark because you have 3 tons of CO2 for 1 ton of fuel. B30 is 1/3 FAME. So right now it is equivalent to the spread. So it's about $120, $130. Now, for ships calling in the EU, if you net EU allowances and if you net FuelEU Maritime equivalent penalties, as Konstantinos mentioned, that the policy should not be for anybody to try and pay the penalty rather than avoid it. But netting EU allowances and penalties, you're at a figure which is below $100 per ton, probably around 80 today. And even at this number, so far, there's a very small appetite for covering this carbon abatement cost. Now, if you look at the carbon abatement cost of other fuels, B100 is at $250, $260, for example. Methanol, e-methanol, green methanol, $500, $600, even $700. So it's multiples of what nobody's paying so far for biofuels. With a double counting of FuelEU Maritime, you might go down to $270. That will be subsidized until 2033, and that's it.
That's it.
So with the current pricing, that's why everybody's mentioning biofuels as the obvious solution. And the demand has been pretty much flat until 2024. And the appetite has only come from container ships and from car carriers, companies that pass on the cost to the clients because the client is willing to pay the cost. So this is where we are right now. And what we need to have is definitely a higher carbon price so that the cost of abatement of some of these fuels becomes competitive. And today it isn't. So it goes back to the global fuel standard and the global tax pricing that we might see after MEPC 83. But otherwise, the numbers are absolutely ruthless. With regards to a safe investment strategy so that you don't have a stranded asset, a lot of people would argue the safest strategy is not to invest so that you don't have a stranded asset. So that's where we are today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The time is almost over, so I will go only to a last question to Konstantinos, coming to an end. And this is more to answer from his position as a NIBIA chairman. And I would like to ask you, what are the steps that NIBIA is taking as an organization with IMO, NGO, consulting status to address the various practical issues that are starting to appear in the supply chain with biofuels and will multiply when you may have more fuel types available. And I'm referring to issues like fuel standards, fuel quality, sustainability, certification, suitability of bunkering barges. Just to...
Yeah. Well, the good thing is that we're trying to address all problems which were discussed today, some of them successfully, because EBIA's membership consists of producers, blenders, bunker sellers, bunker buyers, testers. So we have the full change of stakeholders, and we have working groups within which these issues are discussed. Now, biofuels, thankfully, were probably addressed through the latest ISO. So that gives a very valuable tool to everyone in this room to evaluate what type of biofuels are being sold. Second is the certification aspect. Again, this is in motion. I mean, in real life, we already have the IACC and other regulatory bodies which issue the certification. And we have a dedicated IMO representative at the IMO who is addressing all these issues such as CII, such as the biofuel certification, as I said earlier, but most importantly, when it comes to the quality. For the quality to be assured for all of us here, whether we sell or buy, we need a clear supply chain. We need from 0 day until the end, when the vessel is about to consume this type of fuel, to be clearly traceable and quality-wise. And this is what ABI does by way of its working groups and by way of its interventions relating to the safety committee of the IMO, but also the CMAC and other regulatory bodies. What needs to be clarified within our minds is that we cannot avoid cooperation with all stakeholders. Because I've heard that shipping is very competitive. Shipping will not stop being competitive. That's not the point. The point is to remain competitive, but at the same time see that there is one goal for all of us. Whether we will achieve it or not, all of us, it's a matter of decision. But as far as first movers are concerned, because I want to touch on that as well, not yet. Not until the IMO clarifies everything. And this is what ABI tries to do as well.
So, we run out of time. I would like to take this opportunity and thank you very much for providing this insightful views. We wish to have a crystal ball and get the right answer, but we are here only today to say our views and what we believe it is the status today. And please join me in giving them a well-deserved round of applause, and we are ready for any questions. Dr. Kokarakis, do we have a microphone? No.
I would like to ask a question that we discussed 2 days ago at our technical committee. I would just rephrase. As we know, in January 2028, the global IMO measures, midterm measures, will start being applied. So the question
which one? We don't know yet.
We don't know them yet.
Which one?
Whatever is decided.
Whatever it is.
Hopefully by April, coming April, it will be decided. Hopefully. Otherwise, these guys are going to stay there forever. The question was, would the European community withdraw their regional regulations in light of IMO bringing the global ones? I will change. I would like the opinion of the panel, changing the word would the word should. Should the European community withdraw the regional regulations, or we should keep paying taxes 2 times for the same thing?
May I take this?
Yes, of course.
Very quickly. I will put on my legal hat because I'm a lawyer. The fuel EU regulation by the European Union allows them the discretion to withdraw this. So should is nowhere to be seen. Should is a word nowhere to be used in this type of regulations, because it's like you are imprisoning yourself for future decisions. So they have the ability, and they have stated that they will reconsider depending on the extent of similarity of any future IMO measure. Which means that the IMO needs at least, the IMO's purported measure needs to have at least the same effect as the current EU measure. Now, it's a matter of interpretation. If you don't want my opinion, but my opinion, I will tell you anyway, but my opinion is that they will not. Because they will find differences.
I agree with you.
They will find differences. They will strive to, it's a money-making machine.
The new proposal is dramatically stronger and more severe than proposal at IMO.
There are various proposals in the IMO.
The one that is going to be voted.
The Chinese one is going to be voted. The Chinese is most likely going to be voted because it satisfies the US as well. Yes, but this is why it's going to be voted.
We'll continue the debate on the buffet later, but does anyone has a different opinion and would like to express that? No. Any more questions before I leave the floor to our chairman? No. Thank you again, and
see you later.
See you later.
Good evening, Kalispera, bonsoir à tous. So on the behalf of the French Maritime Cluster President, Nathalie Mercier-Perrin, it's an honor to conclude the third Maritime Committee. So my name is Pierre Leonidas, so as you have noticed, I have a Greek name, but it took me 36 years to be here in Athens. So I would like to thank the organizers of this French committee, especially the France-Greece Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and also, well, the Maritime Committee. Well, many thanks to Cyril, of course, Mr. President, Catherine, Yannick, and stuff. And also, we have many thanks to the distinguished speakers, panelists, and attendees for very valuable contributions and active participation. So I also wanted to acknowledge the importance of this Maritime Committee. It's the third edition, and well, it's important to foster cooperation between our two maritime countries, two powerful shipping countries. And so as a conclusion, well, you know, the maritime industry stands at a crossroads with mounting pressure to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The need for a greener shipping sector has never been more than urgent. So I would like to try this. Okay. So we already discussed about, you know, all the regulations and the international cooperation. Well, countries are working together to set ambitious targets, such as the IMO's 2015 net zero goal, and also the Fuel EU Maritime Regulation. So let's have a recap of today's key discussions. So we had two roundtables, one about the shipbuilders and ship owners. So if we have to summarize the key points and also the challenges, mostly about shipyard attractiveness and competitiveness, modernizing fleets, sometimes a big ecosystem which can provide services. And what are the solutions, maybe, which is also, of course, try to, of course, foster public-private partnerships. Collaboration is key for the driving innovation and scaling up solutions. It will be also a combination of policies, innovation, and investments can help make shipping a key player in the fight against climate change. And about the new fuels. So I remember the President Wider first said, what, when, where, how much? We have seen all the solutions. What are the advantages of new fuels, biofuels and e-fuels? Of course, e-fuels reduce greenhouse gas emissions. They can be used in existing infrastructure, and e-fuel production can be localized. And but what are the challenges? Production costs, energy efficiency. Each of these solutions that we have heard presents advantages and disadvantages. A combined approach is probably the most likely to achieve the objective of decarbonization. Complex challenges remain, as I said, high costs, technological complexity, regulation, and these obstacles to widespread adoption are complex for several reasons. A complex value chain, it involves numerous actors, ship owners, shipyards, energy suppliers, etc., and requires significant coordination. Developing technologies also, decarbonization solutions for shipping are still in the early stage and present limitations compared to existing technologies. And also, of course, high costs. The energy transition requires significant investment to develop new technologies. But, of course, there are many solutions. And, well, in conclusion, each alternative fuel has its unique set of advantages and drawbacks. The optimal solution for a sustainable future likely involves a combination of these fuels, and the potential for these fuels will continue to grow. And I wanted to well, end this conclusion with a touch of optimism, which is good. So about the future, and we will have, of course, the ability to overcome challenges and achieve a sustainable future. I'll, of course, let's encourage us to continue working together to drive the transition to greener shipping. And as we conclude this insightful maritime committee, it is clear that the future of shipping lies in a greener, more sustainable future. And we can, by working together every year on each project, we can overcome the challenges and seize the opportunities that lie ahead. And let us continue to innovate, collaborate, and strive for a more sustainable maritime industry. So this is the, as you can see, the major challenges, but we will find the solutions. Thank you very much.